The story begins by showing us a little kid named Minato Kusunoki, who's currently leaving an offering in the shrine of his grandfather's house. However, the snack he placed there as an offering disappears right away, and that's when Minato sees a little girl running away with it. Before he can do anything, the little girl disappears into thin air, which obviously terrifies him. His grandfather realizes that he's finally able to see them, and it looks like he only sees good ones. He explains that the little girl he saw was Zashiki Warashi, a house spirit, and she's lived here far longer than he has, so he shouldn't get mad if she takes his snacks in the future. No matter what, he must be generous and let her have some snacks if she wants. Minato accepts the advice, and his grandfather lets him know that he can see what other people can't, and someday there will be a time when his power will help him. Several years later, now that Minato has grown up, he moves to a countryside estate in a town near the mountains. Since it's a small town, a man named Harima Saiga notices him right away because he's never seen him around. After a long walk, Minato finally finds his family's abandoned countryside estate. Though at first glance it's clear that the place is haunted, as it's all surrounded by a dark miasma. He can't actually see it, since his eyes only show him good things, but even he can tell that there's something off with the place, because it looks kind of hazy to him. Even so, he just decides to go in, and as soon as he tries to open the door, he feels a jolt of static electricity. In an instant, the heavy dark miasma in the place suddenly disperses, and he notices that the note with the home address he wrote earlier is lighter now. Just then, a strong wind takes the piece of paper away, making it fly so far that it even reaches the mountains. There, it lands right on top of a shrine covered in a dark miasma, instantly purifying it and clearing the place from any evil spirit haunting it. Meanwhile, Minato soon finds out just how big this property is, though he also sees that it needs a lot of work. Without wasting more time, he starts writing to-do lists to organize himself, because there are a lot of things to do, like cleaning up cardboard boxes, vacuuming, cleaning the bathroom, and cleaning the entranceway. His mother makes sure to call him to make sure that he's eating well and everything, though Minato reminds her that he's not a kid anymore. He then asks her if it's really okay that he gets to live in this house by himself, and his mother explains that his father's distant relative built it for their retirement, but they died. Besides, no one has lived there for 2 years. Minato mentions that the garden is bigger than he thought, and it feels like it's too big for him. His mother reminds him that he has all the time in the world, so she's counting on him. He still asks her why there was no buyer for this property since it's such a nice house, but his mother just tells him that some people did come to view it, but they all declined, so she doesn't know. Minato assumes that it's cursed or something like that, but he doesn't think about it and finishes cleaning the whole house. He doesn't notice the dark miasma in the place though, because the memos he wrote earlier actually got rid of it. Even though he cleaned the whole area, Minato notices some flowers outside the door that clearly weren't there before. The next day, a gardener visits the property and completely transforms the neglected garden, taking care of cleaning every corner until it looks presentable. Now that he has so much space, the gardener asks him if he should find something to plant around there. Minato admits that it looks rather empty, but he clarifies that he's only in this property temporarily, so he thinks he shouldn't change things too much. As they speak, a dark miasma surrounds the gardener's shoulder, and he immediately shows discomfort, saying that it's been giving him problems lately. Just then, a strong wind sends one of Minato's notes flying to him, and as soon as it makes contact with his shoulder, the gardener is surprised to see that the pain is gone. It was a struggle to raise his arm, but it feels much lighter now, and he can easily move it. Minato then notices that the things he wrote on his memo disappeared, and it's not the first time it happens. He also sees a mugwort that wasn't there before in front of his door, and the gardener lets him know that he didn't place it there. Minato has no idea where it came from, and he doesn't give it much thought, but the next day he finds a Japanese raspberry. For a brief moment, he manages to see something leaving the property, and it makes him remember when Zashiki Warashi used to leave little gifts in his house when he was just a kid. Following his grandfather's advice, he decides to go shopping to buy a thank you gift for whoever is leaving him these little things. After a while, Minato returns home with a bunch of stuff, but he goes for sake and Japanese sweets as an offering. Just then, he sees a creature that looks pretty much like a dog entering his garden and talking to him. At first, Minato is shocked that a dog can speak, but the creature clarifies that he is actually a Yamagami, a god of the neighboring mountain. Now that Minato knows that, he decides to call him just that, though Yamagami is kind of confused to see that he's not surprised at all, which makes him think he's a strange one. Minato assumes that he's the one who's been bringing him stuff, so he thanks him and offers him the things he bought as offering to return his favor. Yamagami eagerly enjoys the Japanese sweets, and Minato offers him some sake so he can cleanse his palate. Yamagami explains that he's not at his full strength yet, so water will do for now. With this in mind, Minato gives him store-bought water, and after drinking it, Yamagami admits that it can even compete with the water of his mountain. Leaving that aside, he also tells Minato that he's been a lifesaver, so he has his thanks now. Minato doesn't understand why at first, so Yamagami explains that he exorcised evil in his shrine with his handwriting. While he was weakened, evil ran amok here, so it was fun to see them completely wiped out. Yamagami informs him that his handwriting exorcises evil, and that's when Minato finally understands why it kept disappearing. Just then, the gardener comes back for a tool he forgot in the garden. Minato gets really nervous because Yamagami is right there, so he tries to explain the situation. However, to his surprise, the gardener just grabs his tool and says goodbye with a smile. That's when Yamagami explains that he's the only one who can see him. Minato then offers him more water, but this time, he serves him sparkling water, which really surprises the god. After his initial shock, Yamagami is actually pleased, saying that this water tingles his tongue, so it's rather nice. Minato is glad that he likes it, and as he drinks, he decides to ask him why his handwriting has a power like that. Yamagami admits that he doesn't know that, so he asks him if anyone has ever complimented his handwriting before. Minato mentions that he only remembers one time, when he made a nameplate as an assignment for school when he was a child. He explains that his family runs a hot spring inn, and he carved the inn's name, so his father displayed it. His handwriting was worse than it is now, but one day, a mysterious customer came and told him that it was excellent. When he learned that Minato made it, the man asked him to make sure not to take it down, and he recommended making one more and displaying it at his house as well. Minato mentions that the man even said that he'd pay him if he made one for him too. Since then, making nameplates for his family's house has become his hobby, so he made some for this house as well. Yamagami can immediately see the power these nameplates hold when Minato shows them to him, so he asks him to go ahead and put them up. Minato places one at the entrance and another on the back door, which immediately creates a protective barrier around the whole property. Yamagami informs him that a barrier was formed around the house, so now evil can't even approach this place. Minato is surprised to know that his nameplate is that powerful, and Yamagami clarifies that his power is rare, so if he becomes aware of it and hone it, he will gain greater power. A few days later, Yamagami visits him again as usual, and Minato is already waiting for him with some Japanese sweets, since he likes them so much. However, this time, after eating some sweets, Yamagami's body suddenly starts glowing. Minato is clearly surprised, so Yamagami explains that it's all thanks to him because he pays respect to him. Knowing this, Minato decides to kneel and claps his hands twice to pray, thanking Yamagami for coming to visit his house. Just like that, Yamagami starts glowing even more, which is truly what Minato would expect from a god. Despite how impressive it is and how proud Yamagami is about it, Minato later asks him to turn it down a bit because he's truly blinding him now. In a change of scene, we see an abandoned warehouse full of evil spirits, where Harima chants incantations to get rid of them. His co-workers, Shiori Horikawa and Kotetsu Katsuragi, try to take care of the remaining ones, but one of the spirits suddenly breaks through the window and escapes from them. Harima immediately jumps out the window to chase after the spirit because there's a shopping district up ahead and he can't let it get there. The spirit is way faster than him though, but just as he thinks it's going to hurt someone innocent, Minato walks by, holding a shopping list in his hand. Much to Harima's shock, the spirit immediately disintegrates as soon as it comes into contact with Minato. That leaves him highly surprised and confused because it was a strong evil spirit, but it was gone in a flash. Minato has no idea what happened, but he seems more concerned about the fact that his handwriting disappeared again. Harima approaches him to see if he's okay, but Minato just tells him that he wrote down what to buy so he wouldn't forget, but his handwriting completely disappeared. He tries to remember what he wrote down, saying that it was a daily essential, which is needed on a specified day of the week. Harima tries to help him and tells him that probably means trash bags, which he can buy at the drugstore up ahead. Minato cheers up and thanks him for the help before leaving, but Harima is still wondering who he exactly is. Sometime later, Yamagami visits Minato's house early in the morning to do something. When Minato wakes up, the first thing he sees when he walks outside is that Yamagami has used his power as a god to completely restore the garden, even bringing back the pond that was there once. Minato is clearly impressed, since he didn't know he could do stuff like this, but Yamagami tells him that it's nothing because he's a mountain god. Despite how happy he is, Minato notices that Yamagami is now smaller than before for some reason. Yamagami explains that it's because he used his power, but it doesn't matter because he'll grow back soon enough. A few days later, as Minato walks home, he wonders how Yamagami is doing, since he hasn't visited in a while, so he hopes he's okay. He gets home and runs to the garden to see if Yamagami is there, but he only finds a squirrel, which makes him wonder what happened. Just then, Yamagami tells him that he doesn't need to worry, and Minato is relieved to hear his voice, until he sees that he's now grown even smaller than before, for some reason. He asks him just how much of his power he used to shrink down like that, since he almost looks like a Pomeranian now. Before he can say anything else, 3 little creatures show up, and Minato immediately assumes that they're his offspring. He's kind of shocked to know that Yamagami gave birth to triplets, no less, but he then remembers that he's actually an old man, which wouldn't make sense. Yamagami clarifies that they're Martins, his minions, and he's split himself to create them. Minato finally understands why he shrank so much, and the little Martins introduce themselves as Seri, Torika, and Utsugi. After their introductions, Minato also introduces himself and offers them some castella, a fluffy western sweet he bought earlier. The Martins gladly accept the food, and they even say that it's the best food they've had in their lives. Yamagami clarifies that it's probably because it's the first food they're having in their lives, since they were all just born. Minato is happy to see that they like the sweets so much, so he tells them that they can have as much as they want. This makes the Martins really happy, and they all eat until they get full and fall asleep. Minato enjoys the cute sight, but just as he turns to see Yamagami, he notices that he's already back to normal, which was faster than he expected. Ignoring his shock, Yamagami informs him that he has a visitor. Outside his door, Harima is completely awestruck when he sees the house, because he can sense something extraordinary, and he even wonders wonders if it's sacred ground. Minato soon opens the door and recognizes him as the man from the other day, so he invites him in. Harima gives him a business card, saying that he's an onmyoji, and he works for a public institution. After their introductions, Harima cuts to the chase and asks him if it was his power that exorcised the evil spirit the other day. Minato wasn't even aware that he did something like that, but he does remember the moment the handwriting on his shopping list disappeared. Harima informs him that lately, troublesome evil spirits are on the rise, but there aren't enough onmyoji to get rid of them. He clarifies that people who can exorcise are rare to begin with, so he'd like him to sell them his talisman. Minato doesn't know what he means at first, so Yamagami tells him that Harima probably wants the paper with his handwriting on it. This confuses him a little, because that paper is merely his shopping list, with 3 things written on it. Minato stares at Harima for a moment, and Yamagami assures him that he can't see him either. Once this is clear, Minato informs Harima that the talisman he wants is actually just his shopping list, so it's not even worth 1 yen apiece. Harima is completely shocked by the information, because an evil spirit that was too powerful for 3 onmyoji was exorcised by an amateur with a shopping list. Minato still tells him that he can write him something if he wants, so Harima accepts the gesture, saying that it's much appreciated. He silently wonders what he's going to write, thinking for a moment that it'll be something important. However, he instantly spits out his tea when Minato confidently starts writing another shopping list, adding things like brown sugar bun, chestnut bun, kibi dumplings, mugwort dumplings, sakura mochi, and the like. Minato is a little concerned when he sees his reaction, but Harima tries to keep his cool and tells him that he's fine, though he can't hide his shock when he notices the power Minato's handwriting really has. He can see a light coming from the handwriting, and it makes him wonder how a layperson's list of sweets can have such power. Minato suddenly feels exhausted for some reason, so Yamagami explains that it's because he used his power. Knowing that he can't do much more than this, Minato gives Harima the list of sweets, saying that it's all he's got for now. Harima accepts the list and assures him that it's more than enough, and he then gives him the payment he promised. Minato quickly tells him that he can't take the money, because the notepad he used is from a 100 yen store. Harima insists, saying that this is what it's worth, and it's actually not even enough, so he'll bring the rest at a later date. Minato tells him that there's no way he can take it, but Harima stubbornly insists, not planning to back down. Yamagami then approaches Minato and asks him to take the money, because that man will not back off anytime soon. Having no other choice, Minato accepts the money, but he still feels bad, so he decides to take Harima's hand to draw a pentagram with a permanent marker, since it's the symbol of onmyoji. Harima can instantly see the power that comes from the pentagram, but before he can say anything, he receives a phone call from his co-workers, who tell him that they urgently need his help. Without wasting any time, Harima runs to the place and finds his co-workers, but they warn him that even he can't exorcise an evil spirit of this size alone. The evil spirit suddenly flies straight towards him, so Harima can't do anything but brace himself, having no time to react. He fears for his life for a moment, but much to his shock, the evil spirit is immediately exorcised thanks to the pentagram Minato drew on his hand. Meanwhile, Minato peacefully sleeps at home, having no idea that the drawing he made actually saved a life. On a new day, Minato busies himself doing the accounts of his finances and sighs a little discouraged when he finds that he has no money. Harima gave him money for his memo, but he used that money already to buy sweets. He gets distracted when the Martins express their joy at eating a dessert he gave them, saying that it's quite exquisite. While they're eating, they happily thank him, but also worry about how expensive it might be. Minato asks them not to worry about that, since he wants them to eat quality food. As soon as he says this, Utsugi doesn't hesitate to eat another one, but Seri chides him, saying he's already eaten too many. On the other hand, Yamagami chews on his sweets with delight, mentioning that he expected nothing less from the kintsuba from Chikugendo, a store with over 200 years of history. He enjoys the way it melts in his mouth, and Minato is happy to see him like this, but he also thinks that both he and the others can't control themselves. They really don't know how to hold back, and if he tries buying cheaper sweets, they always look so glum. Since he can't just leave it at that, the next thing he does is go out into the streets and check some flyers in front of a coffee shop advertising a part-time job. On further reflection, he realizes that such a salary wouldn't be very useful, so he has no choice but to downgrade the quality of snacks, that being the best solution. At that moment, he notices a raffle booth further down in the Hoji City shopping district, where people can exchange their tickets for a chance to win. Since he has one, he approaches the booth to try his luck, but the next thing that happens is unexpected, because as soon as he participates, the guy at the booth announces that he has won the first prize. While Minato is still in disbelief, the guy hands him a cash voucher of 100,000 yen, leaving him even more stunned than before. Without giving it much thought, he takes advantage of his good fortune to go buy some sake for Yamagami, but as if that weren't enough, the moment he walks in, he's greeted by people throwing confetti. One of those present explains to him that the Tanba liquor store is celebrating its 333rd anniversary today, and they are giving away 2 bottles of their best sake to customer number 333, which is him. Minato tries to convince himself that it is only a coincidence, but when he gets home, he exclaims that it definitely isn't, because he kept winning stuff after that, and now he has a lot of shopping bags and gifts. He wonders why he's been this lucky, and Yamagami clarifies that it's not his power. He shows him the tortoise just sitting on a rock in the pond and explains that it's the divine tortoise, Reiki, the reason he's been so lucky today. Yamagami mentions that the 4 holy beasts are the mythical creatures that bring him luck, and Reiki is one of them. Minato doesn't even know when he got here, so Yamagami informs him that Reiki said he helped him when he banished an evil spirit in town, and his string of luck is thanks to his power. Minato is a little reluctant at first, not fully believing this, but that's when he suddenly receives a phone call from his mother. She tells him that he won the prize money of 1 million yen in the sweepstakes he entered before he moved. Minato is completely shocked by this, and he soon realizes that this is truly Reiki's power, so he quickly kneels to thank the divine tortoise. Reiki can't really speak, but Yamagami understands him, so he informs Minato that Reiki seems to want to live in this pond. Minato says that he doesn't mind, and he later offers Reiki some of the quality sake he won earlier. To his surprise, the tortoise is next to him in a second, waiting for his fill of sake. Suddenly, a sphere of light descends in front of Minato, transforming into seeds on top of a tree leaf. Yamagami tells him that this is a gift from Reiki, so Minato sets about planting them in the garden, choosing a suitable spot with Yamagami's help. Minato innocently asks what kind of seeds they are after planting them, something that surprises Yamagami, since he should actually ask before planting them. He simply tells him that he will know someday and asks him to look forward to them growing. Later, Minato goes to the Martins to offer them some cookies, but he's surprised by some new visitors who ask if he can give them some. Yamagami remains calm and greets them, introducing them as Fujin and Raijin. This takes Minato by surprise, and he asks Yamagami about them, since he recognizes those names as they are quite famous. Yamagami confirms that he is correct, as they have been depicted in scrolls and folding screen paintings since ancient times. Despite this, Minato thinks they are cuter than he expected, and without thinking twice, he offers them the cookies. They both thank him and tell Yamagami that they thought he was dead because he was awfully weakened when they last saw him. Yamagami quickly discards the idea and tells them that they can't get rid of him so easily. Fujin and Raijin then explain that they caught wind of this area becoming easier to live in, so they came to check it out, and now they can see that this place is truly comfortable. After that, they both become interested in the fine liquor that Reiki is enjoying, so Minato offers them some sake as well. After a while, they both are quite satisfied, and Fujin tells him that as a token of gratitude, he will lend him a bit of his power. With a simple snap of his fingers, this power envelops Minato like a gentle breeze, and when it ends, he is amazed by it. Fujin explains that as he could see, it is the power of wind, and since he doesn't know how to use it, Yamagami asks him to imagine blowing wind. When he tries, Minato manages to send a light breeze toward the leaf Utsugi is holding, which excites him somewhat. However, Fujin tells him that it is barely more than a breeze, something Yamagami agrees with, since he needs to improve. And as if he has no idea of its potential use, Minato asks if this power will help him sweep away fallen leaves, to which Yamagami replies that it will, somewhat puzzled by his simple reasoning. In a change of scene, we see Harima, who is busy in an area where many evil spirits lurk. When he notices one approaching him, he removes the glove covering Minato's talisman, which he uses to exercise it with relative ease. Once he does so, he notices the lines are already fading, but he's still impressed by Minato's immense power. He suddenly hears someone screaming, whom he recognizes as Ichijo Seishiro, who is clearly terrified and cornered by one of the evil spirits about to reach him. Since Shiori is nearby, he demands her help immediately, rather rudely, saying that she's supposed to be his partner on this job. Despite that, all she does is back away, overcome by fear and helplessness, so the evil spirit lunges at him. Before it can do anything, Harima arrives just in time and uses Minato's shopping list to exorcise the spirit in an instant, and he then asks if they're alright. While Shiori thanks him, Ichijo notices that the handwriting on the note in Harima's hand disappears seconds later, and his anger is evident in his expression. Later, Ichijo decides to speak with Shiori alone, and she quickly apologizes for what happened earlier. He puts that aside and asks her if she's figured out where those shopping lists Harima uses came from. Shiori tells him that she has no idea, since he only said someone gave them to him recently, without providing any further details. After hearing this, Ichijo grabs her by the collar of her shirt and bluntly tells her that she's useless. However, seeing him like this makes her ask him why he hates Harima so much, implying that he acts this way because Harima is way more talented than him. That comment really bothers Ichijo, but as soon as he lets go, she rushes off, and at that moment, Ichijo declares to himself quite angrily that he'll never let Harima beat him. Later, Minato comes out to take a look around the garden and mentions that it seems to have stopped raining. Yamagami clarifies that this garden is unaffected because this is sacred ground. Minato is surprised that even that can happen here, but he gets distracted when he sees what they planted the other day, and since it has grown super fast, he asks him about it. Yamagami explains that it's because it's the sacred tree of this residence, a kusunoki, or a camphor tree. Minato wonders if it's getting enough nutrients, and worried about that, he decides to water it a little. Once that's done, he gives Yamagami another of his snacks, which are hot spring buns from a very famous shop in his hometown. After tasting them, Yamagami admits that he could eat thousands of them, and Minato then tells him that he was planning to climb his mountain, Mount Hojo. After all, he is the god of that mountain, so he wants to properly pay respect to his mountain. Hearing his reasons, Yamagami warns him that climbing his mountain is no walk in the park, but Minato says that he already knows that, and that's why he has his gear ready. Yamagami then mentions that there's a small shrine halfway halfway up the mountain, so it shouldn't be too difficult to climb that far. People constantly visited back in the old days, but now it's completely deserted, so he'll have his minions guide him. Later, Minato embarks on his journey with the Martins, but as he ventures deeper into the mountain forest, he realizes it's more difficult than he expected. The Martins advise him to watch his step, prompting Minato to question Yamagami about reaching the shrine effortlessly, as it seems that wasn't entirely accurate. As Utsugi relaxes on Minato's back, the others scold him, saying he's only making the journey for him more difficult. However, Minato asks them not to worry, as Utsugi doesn't weigh that much, though this only makes them complain about him being so indulgent. At one point, Minato crosses a river, and after walking through a narrow passage, he finally arrives at the shrine, which has a huge tree in the center. When he sees the shrine's current state, the Martins tell him that Yamagami won't be bothered if he doesn't clean it, since he already directly worships him. Despite this, Minato clarifies that he can't leave it like this, because it's thanks to this small shrine that people worshipped Yamagami in the past. His words motivate the three of them to help him, so they spend a pleasant time cleaning and organizing the shrine. After finishing, the four take a break for a snack, and Minato is pleased with how clean the place is now. They suddenly hear the chilling sound of birds in the treetops surrounding them, and the first thing the Martins do is dart off in one direction, leaving Minato confused. After following the path they had hastily taken, he finally finds them near a waterfall, but they pay no attention to him as they are on alert for the evil spirit ahead. For the first time, Minato manages to slightly perceive that black haze, and since he doesn't know what it is, the Martins inform him that it's an evil spirit. After a few seconds, it lunges directly at Utsugi, but he manages to dodge it in time, running into Minato's arms in fear. They realize that this spirit has possessed someone, and they're also surprised that Minato can't detect the impurities covering the entire area. He explains that he can only see good things, but if he can even see a little of it, it must mean it's a very powerful evil spirit. Chirika mentions that with so much impurity, they can't get any closer, and Utsugi even feels nauseous because of it. As for Sari, he reminds Minato about the notepad he's carrying, saying that he can do something with his handwriting. Following his suggestion, Minato takes out the shopping list and tries to approach, but he's forced to back away immediately to avoid being attacked, confirming that there's no way to get close without being attacked. And when he thinks about what to do next, an idea comes to him, so he quickly throws the notes into the air, and that's when he uses the power of wind, sending the notes flying directly towards the evil spirit. Although some of them miss, at least one makes contact with the evil spirit, which is more than enough to destroy it. When that happens, the sphere that was inside it falls to the ground, which transforms into the being that was possessed. Minato tries to check on it to see if it's alright, but the creature doesn't answer and simply leaps up the mountain. Upon reaching the summit, it turns to look at him before leaving, and while Minato is surprised by its speed, he's relieved to know that it's safe. After returning home, Yamagami thanks him for cleaning his shrine, and when Minato asks him about the creature he saw, Yamagami simply tells him that he'll know someday. Leaving that aside, Minato notices that the camphor tree has stopped growing, but they reassure him that it's nothing to worry about. Just then, Reiki approaches him to get his attention, wanting him to receive an unexpected visit. When Minato opens the door, he sees a creature resembling a dragon and assumes that it's the one he saved in the mountain, though he soon realizes that it looks rather different. He sees that it's a type of dragon, but this one is smaller, and since it greets him so kindly and politely, he decides to respond the same way and lets it in. Once he does, Yamagami explains that it's one of the 4 holy beasts, like Reiki, and its name is Uryu. Suddenly, the dragon is distracted by the sight of the sacred tree, and as it flies towards the tree, it lets out a rather loud roar. Seconds later, dark clouds gather above them, and it finally begins to rain, something that surprises Minato, since that cloud came out of nowhere, and he didn't expect it to rain in the sacred ground. Right after, much to his surprise, the sacred tree begins to grow at an incredible rate, reaching a size and development far greater than before. After that, Uryu approaches him, and Sari translates his words to Minato, as it says that it would like to live in this pond from now on. Minato readily agrees, as long as Reiki is okay with it, and he then serves the dragon some fine wine, which it greatly enjoys. The Martins tell him that Reiki is happy to have a drinking buddy now, and Yamagami mentions that Uryu is very grateful to him. He then reminds him about that onmyoji named Harima, because according to Uryu, when he was possessed by an evil spirit, that man exorcised it and saved him, thanks to the pentagram he drew for him on his hand back then. Minato is surprised by this, but he's just glad to know that Uryu is okay after going through all of that. He later receives Harima in his house to give him the new talismans he asked for, that is, the shopping lists. And since Harima always brings him gifts in return, Yamagami's mouth waters at the thought of eating these Japanese sweets. He can't help but stare at the soft red bean jelly he brought this time, so Minato laughs at the sight, completely forgetting that Harima can't see anything, so it's rather strange that he's smiling at nothing. Leaving that aside, Harima tells Minato that the pentagram worked better than he expected, but he asks him to draw the grid crest this time, since the star shape he drew isn't his family's crest. Minato had no idea that the pentagram was actually a family crest, so he apologizes for drawing it without asking first. With the grid now drawn on his hand, Harima finds himself in a bar with Kotetsu, who mentions how well things have gone for him thanks to the boy he met and these blessed memos. He also points out that pieces of paper must be complicated to handle since it's difficult to throw at spirits. Harima informs him that to solve that, he asked the boy to write the memos for him on business cards. Kotetsu laughs at the idea, and since he plans to throw business cards, he asks him if he'll wear a leotard and go with an older and a younger sister. Harima is confused by this, not understanding why he would do such a thing, causing Kotetsu to feel frustrated that his reference wasn't understood, considering this what they call a generation gap. Putting that aside, he asks him to be very careful and stay vigilant, because if the others find out about that guy, it would put an innocent civilian in great danger. Though he supposes that Ichijo has already noticed, so it's a little late, since he saw the power already, and he obviously has it in for him, but he hopes that nothing bad happens. As if his worries were coming to life, we see Minato walking calmly through the city streets the next day, holding a shopping list in his hand. There, he accidentally bumps into Ichijo, but when he turns around to apologize, Ichijo simply glares at him and continues on his way. Minato is taken off guard by this, and he mutters that it wasn't necessary to look at him so nastily. As he walks away, it's revealed that he has some kind of talisman stuck to his back, and since his plan has worked well, Ichijo raises a malicious smile, already thinking about his next step. Sometime later, Minato makes another shopping list at home, using a brush-style pen this time, since it feels most right. As he takes care of that, Yamagami notices Ichijo's talisman lurking around the house, which makes him remember Harima's concern the other day when he asked Minato if there was anything strange happening to him. He said that there was a troublesome colleague of his who treats him like an enemy, and he saw the talisman Minato drew, so he's had it out for him. Harima also explained that that man uses his Shikigami to keep tabs on what he does, and he gets rid of it whenever he sees it, but he must stay vigilant. Yamagami can't help but think that humans have always been foolish, and it apparently hasn't changed. Assuming that this talisman lurking outside the house is Ichijo's Shikigami, he immediately uses his power to disintegrate it, saying that he won't let a small fry get the upper hand. Despite this, Ichijo soon figures out where Minato lives, and Shiori follows after him, reluctantly asking him what he'll do when he meets him. Ichijo tells her that he'll either buy off his talismans or make him create talismans exclusively for him. She suddenly hears the sound of a bell, and that's when she notices how bizarre the house looks, because it's like a sacred place. Ichijo completely ignores that and rings the doorbell repeatedly, demanding that Minato come out right away. Not even a minute goes by, but Ichijo gets louder and angrier, exclaiming that he came all this way to grace him with his presence, so he should open the door already. Shiori tries to stop his madness, but Ichijo ignores her and tries to kick the door to force Minato to come out. However, before his foot even touches the door, time suddenly freezes and the sound of a bell is heard. Ichijo falls before he can understand what's going on, and when he opens his eyes, he sees Yamagami's shrine, though it looks a lot more gloomy and terrifying. The place makes his voice sound distorted for a moment, but Ichijo just wonders where he is, because they were in front of the house just a second ago. He calls for Shiori, but he soon realizes that he's all alone, so he tries to run away from the place. As he runs, the root of a tree comes out of the ground to make him fall, making him hit his head with a rock. Ichijo's body lays limp on the ground as he bleeds out, but when he opens his eyes again, he's back at the shrine. This greatly confuses him, and he also notices that his watch shows the same time as before. Ichijo just assumes that it's broken, but when he hears the branches of the trees moving, he starts feeling terrified. From here, we see what happened a while before all of this. Minato peacefully writes his shopping list at home, while Yamagami reads a catalog of Japanese sweets from the famous store of Hojo, S.yAnime. He sees the new product, sake buns packed with chunky bean paste, but he doesn't like the fact that they're using chunky red bean paste instead of smooth. Minato sees the name of the store and notices that it's the store he goes to often, so he decides to visit it and takes Yamagami with him. This is their first outing together, so he feels kind of nervous, but Yamagami tries to reassure him, saying that only a select few people can see him. Even so, as he walks by, a student girl notices a really nice smell, like the mountains, though her classmates can't smell anything at all. Later, as they walk past an old woman, she immediately feels a presence and decides to start praying, feeling blessed. Minato sees all these different reactions from the people and assumes that pious people and people with pure hearts can sense Yamagami. Before going to S.yAnime, Minato decides to take a detour and shows him a quality bowl from a teacup store. Yamagami tells him that he's perfectly fine with that bowl thing he already has. However, Minato explains that drinking out of a bowl seems awkward, and a god deserves to use something more appropriate. After deciding to buy it, Minato mentions that they'll now search for a cushion, and even though Yamagami tries telling him that he doesn't need it, he changes his mind as soon as he feels the softness of a good cushion. Despite how much he enjoys it, Minato notices how small it is compared to Yamagami's size, so he decides to order a custom-made one. Once they do that, they finally go to S.yAnime, and Yamagami mentions that he hasn't been there in a few hundred years. The owner of the store welcomes Minato and recognizes him as the young man who moved in by the mountain. Only then, Minato realizes that he looks a lot better than the last time he saw him. Right after greeting him, Yamagami immediately asks him to tell him not to use chunky bean paste with his new product. Once he orders something, the owner of the store asks him if he's visited the mountain yet. Minato mentions that he's been there a couple times, so the old man asks him if he has met the holy dog in the mountain. The question makes him hesitate because he doesn't want to lie lie, but when Yamagami clarifies that he's a wolf, Minato decides to say that he hasn't met him. That's technically not a lie, so he asks the owner of the store who that dog he's talking about is. The old man tells him that on that mountain lives a benevolent, generous, holy dog. When he was still a hot-blooded youth, he got lost on the mountain and couldn't find his way. After much walking, he found a small shrine, and that's when he saw him. The giant dog barked at him, easily scaring him off and making him run away, but it kept appearing throughout the forest, barking or growling at him. The same thing happened over and over again, until he somehow exited the mountain without realizing it. That's when he realized that the dog actually escorted him to the base of the mountain, helping him find his way back home. The old man confidently says that that was the Okuri Inu, a yokai of an escorting dog. Yamagami complains, saying that he's not a yokai but a mountain god, though the owner can't really hear him. Minato simply smiles at the story, and the old man tells him that out of gratitude, he calls him the holy dog, and as a thank you, he often goes there to offer the buns. When they finally exit the store, Minato mentions that the store owner used to look so haggard, so he was surprised to see him full of energy. Yamagami explains that due to the pains from his internal organs, he quit eating fried food, which was his favorite, so his morale was down, and both his body and spirit were weakened. Even a god can't bend the mechanics of the human death, but he can let him have his healthy body back until his last moments at least. Minato then understands that his power is the reason the store owner looks so lively now, and Yamagami explains that he can't lose the 12th owner of the store just yet. Once they return home, Minato hangs the bell they just bought, and Yamagami enjoys the buns from Echigoya. After a while, Minato decides to take a bath to wash off his sweat, leaving him alone for a bit. Just as Yamagami is about to try the new buns, Ichijo's incident happens, and when he hears such rude words and aggressive attitude, Yamagami sends him to that weird dimension he hasn't been able to escape. Ichijo doesn't even understand what's happening, but as always, he decides to blame it all on Harima, which makes him get angrier. He kicks the shrine out of frustration and tries to run away again, wondering if this is all because of someone from that house instead. Ichijo hears the sound of a bell, and that's when he suddenly falls into a deep hole in the ground. He wakes up at the shrine again, so he tries to run one more time, but this time his body is crushed by giant rocks. The next time he tries to escape, he falls off a cliff, and the process repeats several times, making him live his own death endlessly. This tortuous cycle wears him off after a while, and he even dies from exhaustion after walking so much. Ichijo wakes up at the shrine again, wondering if he's going to repeat this for the rest of his life. Tired and desperate, he sees the shrine and decides to apologize, humbly asking for their consideration. He asks to be brought back to his world, and apologizes for every disrespectful act he has taken toward the mountain. After begging in tears for forgiveness to the god of the mountain, Ichijo is finally brought back to the world, right when he's about to kick the door. He falls backwards in fear as he realizes what he was about to do, clearly confusing Shiori. Ichijo asks her how many days she's waited for him here, but Shiori tells him that they just got here, so she doesn't understand his question. Just then, they hear the sound of a bell, so Ichijo immediately runs for his life, screaming in panic as he escapes as fast as he can. A few minutes later, Minato exits the bathroom and asks Yamagami if anyone has visited, since he heard the doorbell moments ago. Yamagami simply tells him that no one has come, and he quickly changes the subject to say that he really likes the new buns, and the chunky paste isn't as bad as he thought. Minato is glad to hear that it was worth the trip, and he then mentions that he stayed in the bath for too long, so he's hot now. Yamagami is a little confused by this, because he's usually quickly like a bird's bath with what he calls a shower. Minato explains that he missed the hot spring from his home, so he just stayed a little longer to enjoy the warm water. Yamagami thinks about this for a while, and the next day, Minato notices the scent of sulfur in the house. When he goes to the garden, he is shocked to see Yamagami relaxing in a hot spring that clearly wasn't there before. Minato gladly joins him with the Martins, enjoying the warm water, since having a house with a hot spring is truly a luxury. He notices that Reiki and Uryu are not around, so Yamagami tells him that they must be sleeping at the bottom of the pond. He mentions that last night, the three of them created this hot spring and drank together the whole night. Minato says that he has to thank them as well in that case, because this hot spring is the best. After staying there for a little too long, Minato's body gets hot, so he gets out of the hot spring and lies down on the floor, enjoying how nice and cold it feels. Siri worries for him and fans his face, though Minato assures him that he's fine. Utsugi suddenly comes down from the sacred tree and warns him that they've got a problem. Yamagami senses that they have another visitor, so Minato heads to the entrance to see who it is. He doesn't see anyone at first, but after a few seconds, he sees the creature he saved back then at the mountains. Since it's nervously hiding from them, Sari decides to approach him to see what he wants, and he informs Minato that he just wants to know if he can come in. Minato gladly invites him in, and this being later introduces himself as Kirin, though he's too nervous to speak himself. Sari decides to help him and translates everything he's saying to Minato, mentioning the fact that he wants to thank him for saving him the other day, of course. Minato kindly greets him, so Kirin gets happy to know he can communicate somehow, so he continues speaking through Siri. He thanks him and says that he was able to regain his sense of self after that, so he's grateful beyond words, and he will never forget his kindness. Minato keeps a smile on his face, patiently listening to him, but after half an hour, Kirin continues talking, and even Tarika has to replace replace Sari as the translator, since Sari got exhausted. 30 minutes more later, everyone but Minato has fallen asleep as Kirin continues telling them the story of his life. Torika continues translating his words, saying that Kirin is really grateful, so as a small token of gratitude, he'll make him a ruler with half the world under his control. As soon as he hears that, Minato quickly tells him that he appreciates the thought, but he kindly declines the offer. Kirin wasn't expecting that answer, so he asks him why he wouldn't want that, since humans are wretched and savage creatures who love to fight over land and resources and kill their own kind. Fujin and Raijin show up just then, saying that Minato doesn't really have greed like that, and having half of the world doesn't necessarily make someone happy. Minato thanks them for the help, since he didn't know what to do about Kirin at that point. He notices that they've grown bigger than before, so they explain that they're returning to what they're supposed to look like thanks to him. After all, he acknowledges them and respects them, which glorifies their presence. They feel grateful for that, so they decide to give him a fresh fish as a thank you gift, slicing it into small pieces so everyone can enjoy the sashimi. The Martins are really impressed because they used wind to slice the fish so easily, and they ask Minato if he can do that too. Minato hesitantly says that he'd like to be able to, someday, but for now he can only create a small breeze. He decides to give them a demonstration, and Fujin can see that he can control the power of wind to some extent. Yamagami enjoys the nice breeze he creates, but Minato gets a little scared when he makes him sneeze, so he stops using the power. Fujin sees this and mentions that he seems to be suppressing his power for some reason. He asks him if he's scared, assuming that he's worried about harming others. Minato admits that it scares him a little, so Fujin tells him that if he tries out his full force once to know his limit, then maybe he can handle it with more ease. Minato gives it some thought, but he gets distracted by a message from his mother, who informs him about a critical situation, saying that the nameplates are totally wrecked and the spares are destroyed. They urgently need him to create more, so Minato decides to do that first, though he thinks it's strange for nameplates to be broken, and yet it keeps happening at his house. When he asks about it, Yamagami tells him that someone is probably breaking them, and there must be something non-human living in his house. Just then, Minato remembers Zashiki Warashi and thinks that it's probably her. Yamagami explains that they break them as a way of telling him that the effect of the nameplate has expired. Minato mentions that long ago, there was a time when the nameplate of his home fell again and again, even though it was securely fixed in place. It might have been that Warashi was telling them to replace it by breaking it. Yamagami explains that the power imbued in the nameplate he created must have protected his home. With this, Minato understands that he has to make some and send them home quickly, though he doesn't know if he could do something better than he did back then. Yamagami tells him that it seems that his power to banish needs upgrading, because that way, he can imbue even greater power into his nameplate. He needs to strengthen his wind power for that, so he'll take him somewhere appropriate for that. Minato follows him to the back door, but when he opens it, he sees some kind of portal that leads somewhere else. He hesitates at first, but Yamagami asks him to go in, and when he does, Minato walks through a red torii gate and suddenly finds himself in a big forest. The Martins are already waiting for him there, and Yamagami explains that this is the sacred ground created by these minions. Minato is kind of surprised to know that they did all of this, since it looks really big. Yamagami tells him that he can unleash his worst in this place, so he doesn't have to hold back when using his power. Minato still hesitates, saying that he doesn't want to damage the trees recklessly. Yamagami insists and clarifies that it doesn't matter, because the trees are fake anyway, so he can slash them, chop them, and do whatever he wants with them. He tells him that he must forget his fear and give it his all, so Minato accepts and prepares himself, wanting to use his full power of wind for the first time. In a matter of seconds, Minato's eyes start glowing as he gathers all his power, creating a whirlwind that becomes bigger by the second. This power of wind soon becomes greater, almost creating a small cyclone that shakes the tops of the trees through the whole forest. The power is pretty impressive, and the Martins even have to hold on to Yamagami so they aren't sent flying away. However, after a few seconds using his full power, Minato suddenly stops, feeling a little dizzy. He passes out just like that, so Yamagami takes him back home, and once he wakes up, he explains that he exerted his power all at once. Minato apologizes, saying that he apparently needs more training. During the next few days, he continues training his power of wind, which helps him imbue stronger power than before on the nameplates he sends home. Time goes by, and after all his training, Minato can now use his power of wind for what he really wanted, sweeping up the fallen leaves around the house. That helps him finish the job in no time, and Yamagami tells him that he's gotten better at handling his wind power. Minato clarifies that he wouldn't dare compare himself to Fujin, but Fujin shows up just then and tells him that it's actually quite impressive. After all, he's putting the fruit of his training into action, and that is showing in his current skills. Minato tells him that it's all thanks to him, but he still needs to train even more. Fujin asks him to do his best, saying that he'll be strong enough to easily cleave the house of someone he doesn't like in two. Minato quickly clarifies that he's not that aggressive, so he also declines Raijin's offer when he asks him if he should give him his lighting power next. Putting that aside, he asks where the Martins are, and Yamagami informs him that they're also training as they speak. We see the Martins training, and Sari tells the others that what they lack is mental fortitude. Torika agrees, saying that they must let go of distractions and face themselves. They're clearly on the same page, but Utsugi is the only one who doesn't know what they're talking about at all. all. Without wasting more time, Sari and Tarika begin their meditation, so Utsugi quickly tries to copy them, even if he doesn't know what they're doing. Yamagami explains to Minato that when the Martins encountered an impurity with him on the mountain, they were completely helpless. That must have really bothered them, but Minato is glad to know that they are trying their best too. However, just a few minutes after their training begins, the Martins soon fall asleep instead of meditating. Sometime later, Minato decides to roast sweet potatoes in the garden, and both Yamagami and Uryu really enjoy the result. On the other hand, Reiki prefers sweet potato shochu rather than roasted potatoes. Minato asks Fujin and Raijin to help themselves as well, but they tell him that they can make roasted sweet potatoes whenever they want. As a demonstration, Fujin uses his power of wind to elevate the sweet potatoes into the air, and Raijin uses his power of lightning to roast them. However, they are clearly burnt at first glance, and Minato lets them know, but they don't seem to care too much about it. He then sees a trail of fruits leading towards the bushes, and that's when he sees Kirin hiding from him, so Minato assumes that he came back from traveling around the world. Kirin shyly affirms this, so Minato thanks him for bringing him rare fruits all the time. He invites him to have some roasted sweet potatoes with them, though he forgot that they're now burnt to a crisp. Kirin is terrified at the sight because he knows that humans have burnt their own kind at the stake since ancient times, and he fears that Minato will put him under the same treatment. Minato can tell that Kirin hasn't really opened up to him just yet, so Yamagami tells him that he heard Kirin likes beer. With that in mind, Minato decides to have some ready for the next time he visits. Just then, he hears the doorbell, and when he opens the door, Minato sees Harima, who isn't able to say a thing before passing out in his arms. Minato panics and takes him inside, waiting for him to recover to offer him some water and see what's going on, since he really looks exhausted. Harima apologizes for that and mentions that he feels stronger pressure than usual today, for some reason. Minato tries to play dumb and tells him that he's surely imagining it, but he knows that it's because Fujin and Raijin, Uryu, Reiki, and even the Martins are surrounding Harima right now. He quickly changes the subject and asks him what brought him here, so Harima informs him that he has a very special favor to ask of him. He explains that there is an evil spirit so strong that all of their onmyoji combined can't defeat it, so he'd like him to go there and banish it. Minato is clearly surprised by this, and Harima tells him that it all started with a doll that was brought to a temple for purification. The person with the power of purification had passed away, so it couldn't be purified. Before they knew it, the doll turned into an evil spirit, and the true identity of that evil spirit must have been a deity of something. After all, the spiritual disturbance is so overwhelming that even onmyoji like them can't approach. Minato doesn't understand why it has to be him though, so Harima explains that the temple exists in a special space, not of this world, kind of like this place. He's allowed to live in this sacred ground, so he thinks that he might be able to enter the other world. Harima also assumes that he can see them, the gods and divine beasts living in this residence. Yamagami suddenly steps in with rage, not liking the fact that he's counting on his powers, so he harshly asks him to know his place. Even though he can't really see him, Harima can feel his power, and it completely terrifies him. Even Minato is taken off guard by his outburst, and the Martins tell him that he's overdone it. With the intervention of the Martins, Yamagami manages to calm down, which makes Minato feel relieved. Harima reluctantly tells him that he's okay, but he's still wondering what that was. Minato then asks Yamagami if he can enter the other world with his power, and Yamagami confirms it without a doubt, saying that he's a mountain god after all. However, he will only help him on one condition. Later that day, Yamagami enjoys the sweets Harima brought, enjoying the exquisite rice cakes and bean paste from Saruga Humpo. Minato asks him if they should get going, but Yamagami clarifies that he's not going with him. The Martins ask him not to worry and inform him that they'll accompany him in place of Yamagami. They proudly tell him that they've completed their training already, so they're not what they used to be. Yamagami tells him that this is beneath him, so his minions will show off the fruits of his training. With that decided, Minato prepares for the journey, writing several notes to have them prepared just in case. After packing his things, he says goodbye to Yamagami and asks him to watch the house while he's away. Yamagami wishes him good luck, and as Minato leaves, he sees a leaf from the sacred tree getting into his clothes. Minato then takes the train and follows the directions on his notes, but before he knows it, the Martins stay behind, easily getting distracted when they see freshly baked apple pies in a store. He can't say no to them, so he decides to stop for a bit and buys fresh apple pie for them, saying that they must finish this job quickly and buy some more to take home. As they peacefully eat pie, they see several crows near them, and Siri mentions that it seems like one of these crows is showing them the way. They try following it, and the crow leads them to a place where the impurity is awful. Minato decides to go first to protect the Martins, and when they reach the front gate, he notices that the crows are staying away. The Martins can't blame them though, because there's an unbelievable impurity behind that gate, and even Minato can see it. He decides to call Harima to inform him that he has arrived, so Harima lets him know that he's at the back gate. Minato mentions that he's at the front gate, and there is a statue of a Neo-Guardian. Kotetsu tries to use talismans to disperse the impurity, but even using several at once, the impurity doesn't budge, so they can't even get close. Even though he's the one who asked him to be here, Harima asks Minato not to push himself and tells him that he must run if worse comes to worst. Minato accepts and tells him that he'll do the best he can, but as soon as he touches the front gate, he feels a small electric electric shock keeping him away. Siri explains that beyond that gate is the other world, so they will create a way in for him. The three of them place their paws on the gate and use their power to open it, letting Minato inside. Once they're in, Sari informs Minato where the main culprit is, but before he can go, a strange noise coming from the temple puts all the Martins on guard. Just then, three powerful evil spirits break through the walls of the temple and fly directly towards them, giving them no time to react. Minato immediately asks everyone to get behind him and uses one of his notes to exorcise the evil spirits. When the evil spirits are banished, three dolls fall on the ground, but they don't have much time to think about it because more dolls fly towards them right after that. This time, the Martins don't hesitate to back up Minato, fighting the dolls themselves and easily taking them down. After they fall, Utsugi can't help but feel proud, but the others quickly scold him and warn him not to let his guard down. Just then, one of the fallen dolls raises its head, and with its hair, it traps Utsugi and raises him in the air, attempting to slam him against the ground. Sari immediately reacts and uses his claws to cut the hair of the doll, while Utsugi safely lands in Minato's arms. Once they make sure the doll has been defeated, Sari scolds Utsugi because he told him not to let his guard down. Minato is just glad to see that they're all alright, but he knows that their problems are far from over, because there are even more evil spirits inside the temple. The main culprit is a doll that comes out of the temple, and as soon as they see it, they can immediately tell that the amount of impurity is off the charts. That can only mean that this doll is the main cause of it all, and they confirm it when the doll levitates over the temple and lets out a horrible scream, spreading the impurity everywhere. Minato wants to finish this up quickly and go home already, so he grabs a fistful of notes from his pocket and throws them all into the air. He then uses the power of wind to send them directly towards the cursed doll, but to his surprise, the doll reacts right away and uses its hair to tear all the notes. With a strong slash of its hair, it hits all the Martins at once, leaving them beaten and battered on the ground. Minato immediately worries for them, but the Martins ask him to watch out. Before he can react, the cursed doll grabs his body with its hair, completely trapping him and tightening its grip, making it difficult to breathe. Minato can't possibly escape from this, and he knows that at this rate, he'll be done for right here. In a desperate attempt, he asks Yamagami for help, and a few seconds later, he hears the voice of the Martins, who ask him to pull himself together because they're here for him. The three of them use their divine power, and Yamagami supports them from the sacred garden back home, howling to lend some of his power to them. With this powerful divine power, the cursed doll finally falls, releasing Minato right away. Minato doesn't waste any time and approaches the doll, which can barely move anymore. He pulls out his pen before drawing a line on the doll, saying that it must have been hard. As soon as he makes that line, the evil spirit leaves the doll, so it's now finally free of the impurity. Now that it's all over, Minato asks them if Yamagami was the one howling earlier, since he's pretty sure he heard him. Chirika confirms this and explains that Yamagami sent them power remotely, which is really cool. Despite how well that went, they warn him that not everything has been exorcised yet, so they must be careful and keep their guard up. Keeping this in mind, Minato cautiously enters the temple and sees the actual cause of all this, a former mountain god, completely possessed by impurity. Siri mentions that it seems to be in pain, and Chirika clarifies that the case is closed once he purifies this. Minato decides to help the former mountain god, but when he searches into his pocket, he realizes that he's used up all his notes. He's not done yet though, so he pulls out his notepad to quickly write multiple words to banish all evil and purify the former god. Once that's done, he brings the notes with his handwriting closer to it, but to his surprise, he realizes that he can't exorcise it. He already used all his notes, so Siri asks him if there's anything else he can write on. Minato thinks about it and tries to search for something, but just then, the whole place begins to shake, and they all realize that the other world is starting to break. Like always, Utsugi clings to him in fear and asks him to think of something quick. When they hear the loud sound of debris falling, Utsugi panics and gets into Minato's hoodie, but that's when he sees the leaf of the sacred tree. He immediately informs Minato about it, and he assumes that the leaves of the Kusunoki tree must have power because it's a sacred tree after all. With this in mind, he decides to try writing something, though doing so in the small leaf is no easy task, and he feels like he's about to collapse already because he's written down a whole lot since he got here. Even so, he's determined to see this through, so he gives it a try and writes Kusunoki on the tree leaf. With this sacred power, he manages to exorcise the powerful evil spirit, leaving the sphere of the former mountain god. The place is still falling apart though, and they're running out of time, so Minato grabs the sphere and runs away from the place with the Martins as fast as they can. Meanwhile, Harima and the others observe the place collapsing from outside, which makes him feel really concerned. Minato is still inside, so Harima tries to go save him without thinking, but Shiori immediately stops him, saying that they'll get sucked in too. Kotetsu agrees with her and tells Harima that they can't go there right now, so there's nothing they can do but wait. Minato covers his head to protect himself from the falling debris as he runs, but Sari tells him that at this rate they'll disappear alongside this other world. After hearing the alarming news, Minato quickens his pace, running as fast as he can because the exit is right there. However, a giant tree suddenly falls right in their path, and for a moment, Minato thinks that he'll get crushed by it. Just then, the power of lightning and wind save them, cutting the tree in half and creating a crack in the ground, making them all fall through it. When Minato wakes up, he realizes that he and the Martins are out of the other world, though they don't understand how. Fujin and Raijin show up just then, telling Minato that he's really high maintenance. Fujin reminds him that he did say that he would be strong enough to cleave the house of someone he doesn't like in two. That's what he did back there, and if it weren't for that, they would still be trapped in the other world. Minato agrees with a smile, saying that he has no excuse now, and he still has a long way to go. Harima later meets with Minato to thank him for everything, saying that he owes him a lot now, though Minato just tells him that he's glad he could be of help. Even so, Harima gives him a gift and asks him to relay his gratitude to the gods as well. Minato thanks him for his kindness and asks him if he'd like to have a barbecue with them. Harima quickly declines, saying that he's in a hurry, so he'll have to pass. Once he leaves, Minato and the others enjoy a barbecue themselves, though Yamagami sticks to the sweets he usually eats. He enjoys the flavor of the buns and says that smooth bean paste takes the crown with buns any day. Minato informs them that Harima gave them sweets, and while Yamagami is clearly interested, Utsugi moves first and leaves the barbecue to go for the sweets. The others scold him for leaving like that, asking him to finish his food first before eating any sweets. Minato takes care of the barbecue now, and while Fujin and Raijin enjoy the hot spring, he decides to bring them some cold sake. As he serves them the liquor, Kirin shyly comes out of the bushes, so Minato cheerfully tells him that he has beer for him, so he can join them if he wants. Kirin cheers up at that and decides to give him another exotic fruit, though as soon as he sees the durian, Reiki immediately kicks it away and asks him not to bring trash into the sacred garden. Kirin speaks up loudly this time, saying that it's not trash, but a respectable piece of fruit called durian. Reiki tells him that his nose must not be functioning properly, because that thing is way too stinky. Oryu joins the fight, wanting the stinky fruit away from the garden, but Kirin stubbornly insists. While they banter, Minato takes a moment to observe the Kusunoki tree, thanking him for the help. The Martins then inform him that the sphere is changing, and when Minato approaches it, the sphere suddenly transforms into a small chick, which is the last of the four spirits, Ho-Oh. Now that the four holy beasts live in his garden, things haven't really changed much for Minato, who keeps writing his shopping lists as talismans against evil. Meanwhile, Yamagami enjoys his strawberry daifukus, saying that they have a very plump and juicy flesh. He mentions that this collaboration of smooth bean pastes and strawberries is indulgent, so he really enjoys it. While they do their things, Minato notices that a bunch of birds are surrounding Ho-Oh, so Yamagami explains that it's his outdoor classroom, and he's teaching Japanese bush warblers how to chirp. Minato doesn't really understand it, but he's happy to see that Ho-Oh is so popular, since he's always surrounded by everyone, and the garden is more lively now. Everyone relaxes in the garden, and Minato can tell that spring has come due to how peaceful everything is. However, as they enjoy the day, a strange portal opens in the sky without them noticing. Meanwhile, Harima and Kotetsu get rid of evil spirits in an area infested by them. Despite how many they eliminate, more evil spirits keep showing up, and they're completely surrounded. Kotetsu mentions that they usually call this the Spring Evil Spirit Fest because there's so many of them, and it really chips away at their spiritual powers. Even so, Kotetsu still thinks that these are just small fries, so he decides to take care of the situation and summons his familiars, a shark and a penguin that eat evil spirits. Soon, all the evil spirits in the area are exterminated by them, and while the penguin can't eat any more evil spirits, the shark feels like it didn't have enough. Kotetsu reassures it and says that there will be more next time, so it doesn't have to worry. Harima receives a message just then, letting him know that there's another evil spirit nearby, so he leaves right away without a word. In the meantime, Minato exits a store after buying souvenirs for everyone, but as soon as he steps outside, the people around start calling him the Bird Whisperer. That's when Minato realizes that he's actually surrounded by birds, and it's all because of Ho-Oh, who's with him. He's become quite famous in town because of that, and people even take photos of him as he walks by. Minato tells Ho-Oh that this always happens when they go out together, though he doesn't really mind. As he walks home, he runs into the gardener, who's doing a clay figure-shaped hedge for a client and names it Specimen Number 25. Minato hears him talking to himself and decides to approach him, saying that his work is looking nice, and he almost wants to call it Mr. 25. He mentions that it's a rather avant-garde hedge, and the gardener explains that the owner of this house told him he could do whatever he wants with it. After all, he's been on a roll since he worked on his garden, and his shoulder hasn't given him more problems. The gardener notices the bunch of birds standing on the hedge all of the sudden, but Minato plays dumb and quickly escapes the situation. Meanwhile, the Martins approach Yamagami in panic, saying that they've got a problem because there's a bunch of abandoned kami realms in the mountain, and Minato hasn't come back from shopping. Yamagami asks them not to panic and tells them that it must be too many for them to handle, so he will take care of it. The Martins are kind of shocked that the Yamagami himself will take care of it, so they quickly follow his lead. After a while, Minato suddenly notices that the birds are gone, which makes him wonder if something happened. Just then, Fujin and Raijin show up and tell him that he has to go home as soon as possible. They inform him that there's an outbreak of abandoned kami realms and evil spirits today, though Minato doesn't know exactly what that means. Fujin explains that there are millions of kami in this world, and even more kami realms, or sacred grounds. Raijin mentions that some kami realms end up abandoned by their creator though. Just then, a portal opens in the sky, so Raijin uses his power of light lightning to quickly destroy it. Fujin tells Minato that the portal he saw just now was an abandoned kami realm, and Raijin explains that a portal to it can be anywhere. It can be on the ground, in the air, or even in the water, and it moves around, which is problematic. Humans could get pulled in every now and then, and that's called being spirited away. Minato now understands why the birds didn't follow them anymore, though Fujin tells him that he seems awfully relaxed about it, and he should be the most vigilant here. After all, his affinity with kami is extremely high, and it's because he not only lives in the sacred ground, but he also bathes in Yamagami's hot spring. Raijin warns him that if he gets pulled into a nasty kami realm, he won't be able to get out by himself, so he must be careful. Before leaving, Fujin informs him that Yamagami has also set out to destroy the abandoned kami realms, so he has to get home soon. When Minato hears that Yamagami himself has set out to take care of the matter, he realizes that this is really serious, so he decides to take a shortcut to get home as soon as possible. In the meantime, Yamagami notices the several abandoned kami realms appearing in the sky. They're spreading toward Minato's house, which means they must banish it all right here. The Martins quickly split up to help him do the job, and Yamagami jumps right at one of the abandoned kami realms to destroy it. Since Minato is taking a shortcut, he notices the deplorable state of a shrine in one of the alleyways. The place looks really run down, so he stops for a moment to look at it, but that's when a voice suddenly whispers in his ear, saying that he needs to stay away. Minato is a little surprised by this, but cares more about where that voice came from than the warning itself. Before he can react, the doors of the shrine suddenly swing wide open, letting him see a portal that's trying to pull him in. Minato tries to stand his ground, but it's only a matter of time before the portal completely pulls him in. That's why Ho-Oh decides to quickly transform into a giant bird and lets out a loud cry. He goes back to normal after a second though, and both him and Minato are pulled in by the portal. Minato checks that Ho-Oh is okay and then stands up, noticing that he's in a green forest. He doesn't know where he is, but he's pretty sure it feels like when he stepped into a kami realm before, so he just assumes they are in one now. He notices that it's kind of hard to breathe as well, so they must find the exit quickly. As he walks through the place, Minato sees several wooden boxes thrown across the ground. There are too many of them, so he remembers what Yamagami said before. He explained that kami realms reflect the minds of their creators, and it's a replica of the space they find most comfortable. Minato just assumes that this creator must really love wooden boxes, and he doesn't give it much thought. After a while walking, he enters a strange cave, though the air becomes even worse in there. Despite this, he continues walking until he finds a woman sleeping on the ground. Minato assumes that she's the god who created this kami realm, but before he can say anything, the goddess wakes up only to complain about the dreary air, saying that it's so muggy she can't even sleep. She knows it needs to be ventilated, but she doesn't want to bother to do anything about it because she doesn't want to move and she just wants to sleep all day long. While she's in the middle of her turmoil, Minato decides to speak, asking her if she's the creator of this kami realm. The goddess confirms it, though she's a little confused to see a human in her realm. She recognizes Ho-Oh and notices that Minato seems to have a whole lot of protection, though she doesn't understand why he's here since she didn't summon him. Since Minato doesn't know the answer himself, she assumes that he's lost, though she still thinks it's strange because the portal should have been completely closed. Minato explains that a lot of portals to the abandoned kami realms are appearing in the outside world. The goddess feels a little offended by his comment, so she clarifies that she didn't abandon this realm. For a moment, she fears that her power got weaker, and Minato mentions that the shrine he saw on the way here seemed rather run down. The goddess sees the state of the shrine herself and confirms that he's saying the truth, though she doesn't know when that happened or how many moons it's been. She quickly leaves that aside and tells Minato that he's connected with Fujin because she can sense that he has his power. Minato is kind of surprised that she can tell, but the goddess is more surprised to know that a shrewd character like Fujin gave his power to a human no less. With this in mind, she decides to take advantage of the situation and tells Minato that she has a favor to ask. The goddess explains that she wants him to use Fujin's power and ventilate this place. After all, the air here is stale and it's really hard to breathe, even for her. Minato tells her that he can try if it's something he can do, and the goddess wonders when the last time this place was ventilated was. After thinking for a bit, she mentions that in human time, people were talking about stopping envoys to the Tang dynasty. Minato quickly realizes that it's been over 1,000 years in that case, though the goddess isn't even aware because humans come and go so fast that she can't even remember their names. Without thinking too much about it, she lies back down to sleep and wishes him luck, saying that she's counting on him. Minato quickly asks her if she'll help him get out of here when he's done with it, and the goddess easily accepts. He tries to make her promise it, but the goddess asks him to cut it out already, asking him if she seems like an irresponsible deity to him. She actually kind of looks like it, but Minato doesn't say a word, and the goddess suddenly remembers something. She opens a small portal and asks him to chuck all the wooden boxes in the area in there while he's at it. Minato has no problem with it, so while she relaxes and slacks off, he uses his power of wind to send all the wooden boxes into the portal. Meanwhile, the Martins continue destroying all the abandoned kami realms in the area, though Utsugi kind of messes up in the end and falls into some bushes. Yamagami soon approaches them to scold them, saying that they're all quite noisy. Siri informs him that he took care of the ones in the north, and while Tarika cleared the west side, Utsugi finished the east side. Yamagami praises them for their good job and tells them that they now have to rescue Minato. Minato. The Martins don't know what he's talking about at first, so Yamagami explains that Minato is trapped in a kami realm. Torika now understands the cry of Ho-Oh they heard earlier, and Sari says that they must go at once in that case. However, just before they can leave, several abandoned kami realms appear in the sky again. They soon realize that there's no end to this, not to mention they're headed toward Minato's house. Fujin and Raijin arrive just in time, and with the power of wind, Fujin banishes all the abandoned kami realms in an instant. They ask Yamagami if he needs their help, since it looks like he's in trouble right now. Yamagami thanks them for their help and orders the Martins to go right away, asking them to leave this place to him. Raijin tells him that he can take a break, but Yamagami refuses to do so and uses his power to exterminate all the abandoned kami realms in the sky in a matter of seconds. Both Fujin and Raijin are impressed by his power, because it reminds them of when he used to be wild and erupting all the time. Fujin wonders when the last time this mountain erupted was, and Raijin tells him that it was over 1,000 years ago, probably. Yamagami just asks them to stop talking nonsense and clarifies that it was 1,500 years ago. Right after he says that, we see that Minato has finally thrown the last wooden box into the portal. The goddess is peacefully taking a nap, as she usually does, but when she opens her eyes, she's thrilled to see that the place is finally uncluttered. However, she mentions that the air is still rather stale, so Minato decides to use the leaves from the sacred tree in his garden, Kusunoki. He throws 6 leaves into the air, completely clearing the place from all impurity in no time. The goddess is kind of impressed, and she admits that that wasn't bad at all, though she's surprised that he just happened to have them on him. Minato explains that he was saved by these leaves the other day, so he had some on him, just in case. Now the air is more pure, and it is easier to breathe, so the goddess praises him for his job, and Minato tells her that he's glad he could help. The goddess then asks him if she can have some of these leaves if he has more of them. Minato gladly gives her the remaining leaf he has, and the goddess decides to inspect it, noticing how nice it smells. He admits that the scent of the sacred tree is rather strong, and the goddess tells him that she'll let him have some of her power as a thank you gift. Before he can even ask, the goddess points her finger at his head to give him her power, and she later informs him that it's a power to seal things. Minato doesn't fully understand it, so she explains that he can seal what can't be seen. That includes people's feelings, troublesome desires, supernatural powers, or the like. He can seal things like that in whatever he chooses. Minato just then understands what those wooden boxes really were, and the goddess confirms it, saying that humans pray to her about them, so she seals those away for them. Things like dreams they can't let go of, jealousy and resentment towards others, and supernatural powers they can't handle. The goddess clarifies that it doesn't have to be a wooden box, so he can find what works for him, and it's totally up to him to use her power or not. He's free to seal away the power to seal in there, or he can release it with conditions. The goddess slowly drifts off to sleep again, but just before, she tells him that anything is possible if he trains his power. Minato tries to stop her from falling asleep because he wants to know where the exit is. Despite all his efforts, the goddess is now deeply asleep, and Minato knows that he can't force her to wake up, so he wonders what he should do now. Just then, the Martins show up right in time, opening a portal themselves to save him. Thanks to that, Minato is back in the outside world in no time, and the Martins are glad to see he's safe, though they apologize for being late and explain that they got held up by a lot of abandoned kami realms. Siri assumes that he had a rough time as well, and Minato mentions that she was an extremely ancient deity, an unmotivated goddess, but he was given her power to seal things. Siri tells him that that must have been Amaterasu, and Minato is completely shocked to hear that, because she's not quite what he imagined her to be. As they walk back home, Minato asks the Martins how they knew where he was, and Sari explains that the voice of Ho-Oh gave them a good idea of where he might be. Minato realizes that the cry from earlier was a call for help from Ho-Oh, so he has to properly thank him later. Siri clarifies that he can also thank the wind spirit, because the voice of the wind guided them here. Minato remembers the voice he heard right before he got pulled in by the portal, and he now understands that it was the wind spirit trying to warn him of the danger there. Sari explains that it might still be hard for him to see and hear them, so he must focus and try to listen carefully. Minato decides to give it a try, and after focusing for a few seconds, he's able to hear the wind spirits, who tell him that they're glad he's okay. Now that he somehow heard them, Minato decides to thank them all for their help. Meanwhile, Harima gets to a different location with Kotetsu, but just as they arrive, 2 men exit the building and tell them that they're late, because they took care of the miasma around here already. The man asks them what brings them here to their jurisdiction, because when there are exorcists rooted in the area, Onmyoji can't banish evil spirits there. He reminds them that that's the unwritten rule, and leaves without another word. Kotetsu informs Harima that there are disgraceful exorcists who take on cases for outrageous fees, and that man is their leader, though he hopes they're not up to something. Later that day, Minato finally gets back home, but he's surprised to see that Yamagami has gotten small again. Yamagami admits that he overused his power again, so Minato asks him to eat his fill and grow big again. He mentions that he even bought Japanese sweets for him, so he should grow back to his normal size in no time. Yamagami gladly enjoys the sweets he brought him, though Minato admits that his small form is quite adorable, and it's a perfect size to play with Uryu and Kirin. Yamagami asks him not to make fun of him, and with a rather whiny voice he reminds him that he's a mountain god. A while after what happened, happened, Minato is worried to see that Ho-Oh still hasn't woken up. He transformed back to his original state to get help back then, so maybe he used too much of his power. Yamagami tells him that he's sure he'll wake up soon enough because Ho-Oh isn't the type to croak so easily. Minato is more calm after hearing that, so he decides to use his time to train in the meantime. He tells Yamagami that he wants to master the power to seal things that the goddess gave him, because if he can seal the power to exercise, it might help Harima and the others. Yamagami sees what he's doing and admits that it's an interesting idea to trap and contain the power he's been spewing out. Minato uses his handwriting on the lid of a wooden box, since it's what Amaterasu was using. He closes the box and tries to seal his power into it, and even though he can't know if it worked or not, Yamagami tells him that the power is actually overflowing like smoke, so it's not completely sealed. He explains that in order to seal it, he must see the image. Minato doesn't listen, because he's too busy trying to hold his laugh at the way Yamagami pronounces the word. Yamagami gets a little irritated, but he clarifies that Tarika told him that his pronunciation is horrible, so he's aware of it already. A few days later, Minato brings some Japanese sweets to Yamagami, who asks him how the training of the power to seal things is going. Minato tells him that he still has a long way to go, but he puts that aside to mention that he got a call earlier, and the person who was interested in viewing the house canceled yet again. This is the third time it was canceled last minute, so he's really confused, and he doesn't understand how no one would want a rural one-bedroom with nice living, dining, and kitchen area with a quiet, beautiful garden that comes with Yamagami. He's cleaned thoroughly and even had some Japanese sweets ready, just for them to cancel last minute. Yamagami simply acts clueless and says that thanks to that, these Japanese sweets are now his. As he enjoys the sweets, Yamagami notices that they have the color of Japanese bush warblers and the light cherry blossom color on the buns. These gentle, soft colors truly represent spring, so he decides to do something in the garden, making several cherry blossom trees grow there within seconds. Minato is completely fascinated by this, and Yamagami tells him that spring can't begin without the cherry blossoms. Despite how pretty everything looks now, Minato panics when he sees that Yamagami is small again. He asks him if his body is okay, and Yamagami admits that it might take a bit for him to grow back to his normal size. He simply goes back to eating the Japanese sweets, so Minato asks him how he did that just now. Yamagami explains that he used his eyes, because for him, that's the easiest method. Minato just then remembers that the goddess told him that he can find what works for him. That makes him understand that he doesn't necessarily need to use her methods, and with his regular notepads, he might be able to seal his power to exercise. Yamagami tells him that it's only natural that there are things that will and will not work for him. Minato quickly gets to work, and as he writes down some things, he hears the Japanese bush warbles chirping. He goes out for a bit to enjoy the sound, saying that those warbles are perfect sounds for this spring garden. Yamagami agrees, but the piece is suddenly interrupted when the last of the warbles completely goes out of tune. Minato sees the bird struggling and tells Ho-Oh that a teacher is needed. Just like that, Ho-Oh wakes up in a flash and immediately approaches the warbler to scold it, though Minato is just glad to see that he's completely recovered after sleeping for so long. Sometime later, the martins accompany him as he climbs the mountain, though he's having a hard time keeping up. Minato asks them why they're going bamboo shoot digging now, wanting to know if it has something to do with the power to seal things. Sari tells him that there are a lot of bamboo shoots on the Yamagami's mountain, so if he tastes some of that fresh spring delicacy, it might give him more power. Minato hopes that's the case, because he's already exhausted, and they still have a long way to go. In the meantime, Fujin and Raijin spend some time with Yamagami in the garden, enjoying some good liquor. Fujin confesses that he chucked the humans who were interested in buying this house into his kami realm for a while before releasing them. Yamagami isn't surprised to know that it was his doing, but he still tells him that that was a rather mean thing to do. Raijin reminds him that he trapped that guy who tried to kick the gate himself, but Fujin admits that that one actually deserved it. After all, any human who dares to kick the gate of the House of Kami should grovel out of gratitude for being spared their lives. Just then, Fujin notices another abandoned kami realm in the sky, and it's moving towards the mountain. Yamagami mentions that Minato seems to be attracting it, so Raijin simply uses his power to destroy the kami realm. He then says that he's seen many humans before, but attracting kami realms isn't normal. Despite being human, he lives in a kami realm and is around them, which must have had some weird effects on him. Fujin also mentions that Minato was pulled into a kami realm the other day, so maybe he should give him a bit more power so something like that doesn't happen again. Yamagami asks him not to do that, because if he gives him more, Minato will cease to be human. Fujin accepts and gives up on the idea, saying that what matters is how he'll use his powers from now on. Back to Minato, he's completely exhausted after walking for so long, but the martins try to encourage him and tell him that they're almost there. After a while, they finally find the bamboo shoots, and there are tons of them ready for digging. Minato is glad to see that they finally found them, but he informs them that this was so last minute that he didn't have time to get a hoe. As he figures out what to do, a giant bear suddenly appears before him, so Minato freezes in panic, wondering if he should pretend to be dead, though it's a little late at this point. Yamagami's voice suddenly speaks through Utsugi, making him calm down and asking him not to worry, because there's nothing to fear. Minato doesn't understand a thing, so Yamagami explains that what he saw is what they call a gentle giant. Minato completely forgets about the terrifying bear, because because he's more surprised to see that Yamagami can be in Utsugi's body. Yamagami reminds him that these are his minions, so this is a piece of cake. The bear suddenly roars again, but this time Sari translates what he wants to say, and he informs Minato that the bear wants to thank him for taking care of their chief. Yamagami explains that he's talking about Kirin, and the bear tells him that he'd love to show appreciation. Without waiting for a response, the bear simply walks towards the bamboo shoots and digs one with his bare claws. Minato witnesses the bear's strength just then, and he immediately feels glad to know that he's on their side. In a matter of seconds, the bear digs all the bamboo shoots in the area just for him. Minato assumes that he wants him to take these, so he thanks him for the help. The bear roars again, and Sari clarifies that he's saying that the bamboo shots are better when they're fresh, so he should eat it right now. Minato nervously accepts, and Yamagami says that they should enjoy the freshly dug bamboo shoots. After all, eating freshly harvested food is a joy that can't be replaced by anything else, and this is the joy of seasonal produce. Without waiting any further, everyone helps prepare the bamboo shoots, because if they're eating them raw, then it's a race against time. Once they're done, Minato gives Yamagami his portion, and decides to ask him what digging for bamboo shoots has to do with his power. Yamagami asks him who told him it had anything to do with it, and that's when Minato realizes that the Martins brought him all the way here just because they wanted to eat bamboo shoots. Yamagami explains that he seemed to be pushing himself too hard, so he thought this would provide a good change of pace. Minato is a little surprised, but he admits that he does feel calmer after being in the fresh, clean air. Moreover, he thinks he was able to communicate with the animals, so it wasn't so bad at all. Yamagami tells him that he should try the bamboo shoots as well, so Minato listens to him, and as soon as he takes a bite, he's surprised by the superb flavor of the bamboo shoots. A few days later, Minato decides to invite Yamagami to play the shogi collapse game, since he thinks it's nice to play every now and then. He throws all the pieces on the board to explain how the game works, saying that he only needs to pull a piece out without making a sound, because if he does, then they'll switch turns. The one who has more pieces at the end wins, which should be easy enough, but Minato warns him that it's actually surprisingly hard. Even though Yamagami is pretty confident at first, he ends up losing the game, so he demands that they play another round. Minato accepts, but Yamagami struggles to pull a piece out with his paw without making a sound. He blames the piece of wood for everything, but as he fights with it, he ends up making a sound, so Yamagami shakes the whole board out of frustration. Minato just asks him not to break it, but when it's his turn to pull a piece out of the board, Yamagami uses his power to make him lose. Minato scolds him and tells him that he shouldn't cheat, but Yamagami plays dumb and tells him that this is part of his training. Before they can continue arguing, the pond in the garden suddenly starts glowing, taking Minato by surprise. Yamagami explains that some things can get lost and find their way here, so it must be one of those. Minato didn't know about that, but Yamagami assures him it shouldn't be a problem. Just then, a strong current of water comes out of the pond, letting them see a man holding a big fish. The man introduces himself as the Kami Ebisu, and when he sees Minato, he assumes that he's the one who received powers. Minato is really confused, and Yamagami decided to take a nap, so he doesn't know what to do. Before he knows it, Ebisu appears right by his side, so Minato decides to introduce himself and asks him how he knows about him. Ebisu explains that he heard a rumor about this strange human who's been getting Kami powers, so he wanted to meet him. That aside, he admits that this is quite an elegant garden, but as he observes the surroundings, he suddenly sees Kirin. For some reason, Ebisu immediately feels tense, and even though he doesn't understand why, he says that he never wants to lose to that thing, no matter what. Minato doesn't understand what's going on, and Ebisu starts wondering if this feeling is burning passion or perhaps love. Minato doesn't even know what to say to that, and Ebisu just says that this must mean that spring has finally come to him. Kirin just takes a can of beer and walks away, and Minato tries to tell him that he doesn't think that's what it means, which makes Ebisu feel kind of disappointed. Leaving that aside, Ebisu notices that there's a hot spring in the garden too, so Minato gladly invites him to get in if he wants. Ebisu doesn't hesitate, so after getting Yamagami's permission, he gives them some taiyaki as a thank you gift, though Minato is surprised since he got the taiyaki out of the fish's mouth. Yamagami immediately wakes up from his nap to ask him if they're filled with smooth paste, since that's the only thing he cares about. Ebisu informs him that he's got him different kinds, and of course there is smooth paste too. Minato thanks him for the gift, and Ebisu decides to soak in the hot spring for a bit. As he enjoys the warm water, Ebisu sees Minato serving some alcohol to Uryu and Reiki, so he mentions that it's straying off quite a bit, though Minato doesn't understand what he means. Sometime later, Minato decides to continue with his training, and it feels like he's almost getting a hang of the power to seal things. He decides to go to the garden to rest for a bit, and when he sees the weather, he says that the fox's wedding, or sun shower, is over. A small dark fox suddenly shows up and tells him that they're not giving away their bride because of the weather. Minato is surprised to see another visitor, and the fox excitedly asks him if this is his residence. He clarifies that he's just the current custodian of this place, so it's not really his. Minato notices that the fox can't stop staring at the hot spring, so he asks her if she wants to soak in it. The fox nervously denies it and explains that she's in the middle of an important errand. Minato asks her if it's urgent, and she admits that she wouldn't say that it is, but she's still reluctant to accept. It's obvious that she's not being honest, so Minato mentions that today's lunch is inarizushi, so she could join them for lunch. That immediately grabs her attention, so she gladly accepts the invitation and introduces herself as Tsumugi, a minion of the mountain god who resides in the mountain next to this one. She then asks him if his inarizushi is homemade, because the store-bought ones are just as wonderful, but nothing beats homemade inarizushi. Minato tells her that it's actually homemade, with wild vegetables, but he can't guarantee she'll like it. Tsumugi tells him that the fact it was made with care by human hands makes it more than valuable enough. She suddenly notices Yamagami's presence and decides to properly greet him, so Yamagami invites her to eat first and soak in the hot spring later. Tsumugi bows and thanks him, so Minato is shocked to see that Yamagami looks like an actual god. Yamagami feels offended, so he reminds him that he is a great mountain god, and Tsumugi informs him that he is a rather high-ranking kami. She later enjoys Minato's food and immediately starts glowing with delight, finishing all the inarizushi in no time. Minato is glad to know that she liked it, and Tsumugi tells him that it's against her policy to owe a favor, so he must accept a token of her gratitude now. She gives him a golden peach that she harvested at home in the garden they're so proud of, as good as this garden. Tsumugi mentions that this is for kami only though, so perhaps he shouldn't eat it. She explains that this fruit will never rot, and it smells really great, so he can put it up as a decoration. Minato hesitates at first, wondering if he should really have something like that in the house. Tsumugi insists, saying that her master kami actually entrusted her with it, and they said it would prove their garden was superior. Minato finally accepts the gift and thanks her, and he then asks Yamagami what he should do with it. Yamagami simply tells him that he'll eat it later, and Minato asks him if he knows Tsumugi's master kami. He doesn't get a clear answer though, so Minato puts the topic aside and asks Tsumugi to enjoy the hot spring if she wants. Tsumugi gladly accepts, and she asks him if he bathes there too. Minato tells her that he bathes there every day, and she tells him that that makes sense because he doesn't feel like a human. Tsumugi enjoys the hot spring for a while and then takes her leave, but Minato is still thinking about what she said, and he tells Yamagami that he's apparently not like a human. He was sort of aware of it, but now he knows that Ebisu meant that he was straying off from being human. Yamagami confirms it, and Minato says that he's just a mere mortal, so there's no way he could not be affected. Minato confesses that he wants to be able to master the power to seal things, but he's scared of changing. Yamagami asks him not to fear, because even with powers, he is still him. Minato asks him if he'll be able to die a human, and Yamagami promises that he will, so he must give it his all to his training and learn to wield his powers. He then tells him that the hint to the power to seal things might be in his past, because he's been able to see things since he was small, things that aren't human. Minato tries to remember when he was just a kid, the day he decided to leave an offering to Zashiki Warashi, and she left a 4-leaf clover for him. He then remembers that the first time he saw it was when he was only 5 years old. Now, we go back in time to that very moment when Minato manages to see Zashiki Warashi for the very first time. As soon as he sees the 4-leaf clover she left for him, Minato grabs it and runs to tell his grandfather what happened. His grandfather is glad to see that he became friends with her, so he informs him that she says it's in return for the snacks. Warashi is a yokai who has lived in the house even before his grandfather was born, and despite that, it was pretty easy for Minato to become her friend. They now spend a lot of time playing, and Minato teaches her the games he knows. His grandfather can see a lot of yokai that he can't see yet, including some troublesome ones that make a mess every now and then. As he deals with one of these yokai, he sees Minato sharing a Monica wafer with Warashi, which makes him realize that he's getting used to acting like a big brother already. Later that day, Minato returns home after spending the day playing outside, but just as he walks through the entrance, a yokai named Hihi grabs his hat to mess with him. Minato asks him to give it back, but Hihi just laughs on his face and mocks him for a few minutes. He then hands him the hat, so Minato thanks him, but just as he's about to grab it, Hihi takes it out of reach again and laughs. Minato immediately looks for his grandfather to tell him what happened, saying that Hihi is being mean to him. His grandfather laughs and explains that yokai are awfully bored, so that one is toying with him to have fun. Minato still doesn't understand, and he clarifies that that doesn't make it okay to be mean to him. His grandfather just tells him that whether he can get along with Hihi is up to him. The next day, Minato returns home, but he's more cautious than usual as he approaches the entrance. Despite how careful he is, Hihi ends up snatching his hat once again, laughing as he messes with him. Minato tries to get his hat back, but after a while, he realizes that it's useless, so he decides to try something different this time. He steps back and asks Hihi to promise him that he won't play tricks on him anymore, because if he does, then he'll give him a Castella cake. Minato knows that Hihi likes Castella, since he saw him take some from the house altar the other day. Hihi immediately tries to take the Castella cake, but Minato warns him that he has to give him his hat back first, or he won't get anything. Hihi thinks about it for a moment, and he then puts the hat back on Minato's head and runs away with the Castella cake. Ever since then, Hihi and Minato became great friends, so he spent time with him and Warashi. Eventually, Minato's grandfather passed away, and one day, when he was in the 5th grade in elementary school, he saw something he had never seen before. Minato walks back home with his friend Ranmaru, who does nothing but complain about how hot the day is. Minato warns him that saying that it's hot only makes it worse, so they should instead think about stuff that will cool them down, like his snack for today, which is shaved ice. Ranmaru tells him that he's jealous, but he then clarifies that he's joking, because because he will actually have ice cream as a snack today at home. Talking about that doesn't help them cool down at all. So Ranmaru sits down for a moment, feeling really exhausted. Minato just laughs, but he notices that the day has suddenly turned darker, and that's when he sees the eye of a giant yokai lurking behind the trees. The yokai slowly steps towards them, and Minato backs down in fear, remembering his grandfather's words. His grandfather once told him that if he ever encounters a yokai outside, he must run before they notice him, because not all yokai are friendly. With this in mind, Minato tells Ranmaru that they have to go right now, but since his friend doesn't understand his urgency, he makes up an excuse and tells him that he just wants to have his shaved ice right away, so they have to run. This clearly doesn't work though, and Ranmaru just complains and stays where he is, saying that it's too hot to run. Minato insists and tries to convince him, letting him know that his home is not that far from where they are right now. Despite all his insistence, the moment he looks up, Minato realizes that it is already too late because the yokai is right behind them, reaching for them with its hand. However, that's when he hears the clapping of two hands, and just like that, the day is bright and back to normal. The man who clapped his hands to get rid of the yokai warns them that if they keep playing under the scorching sun, they'll suffer from heat stroke. Minato is surprised to see that the giant yokai disappeared, and he still doesn't understand that it was the man's doing. Before he can question it any further, the man approaches them and mentions that he heard there's a hot spring town around here. Both Minato and Ranmaru know what he's talking about, so they decide to take him to the hot spring town. Minato asks him if he booked a room for tonight, and when the man denies it, Ranmaru tells him that he might be out of luck in that case. After all, the rooms are usually fully booked around here, even at this time of year, since it's pretty popular year-round, and every inn here is cozy and awesome. The man is pretty impressed to hear that, and he admits that he would love a chance to enjoy that. He then tells Minato that he'll visit his place and ask if anything is available, but Minato only asks him how he knows that his home is an inn. The mysterious man doesn't answer his question, and he ends up staying at Kusunoki's inn, run by Minato's parents. There was a sudden cancellation on that day, and luckily a room happened to open up, so the man was able to enjoy the hot spring. For some reason, the yokai acted restless and stayed away from the room this gentleman stayed in. Later that day, as Minato complains about his homework, the mysterious man approaches him to see what he's doing. The moment he sees Minato's handwriting, he praises how nice and easy to read it is. Minato thanks him, slightly confused and surprised, and the man explains that it's like his pure and honest heart is within these letters, so he has to make sure to treasure his gift. That compliment makes Minato really happy, so he takes what the man told him to heart, and the nameplates he makes for his house come out really well after that. Back to the present time, as Minato tells Yamagami the story, he also mentions that the men must have known that his handwriting had the elimination power. Yamagami tells him that he was most likely what they call a traveling exorcist. He explains that, unlike on Myoji, exorcists are regular folks, but he must have had significant power. Minato now understands why the yokai stayed away from him, and Yamagami decides to change the subject to ask him how his training to master the power to seal things is going. Minato had completely forgotten about it, and he mentions that he was practicing sealing the elimination power into a talisman. Yamagami informs him that there was a hint for it in his memories, because that exorcist saw what's at the core of his power. Minato remembers the exact words that man used, and he starts to understand it a bit better now. He immediately gets to work, writing down a talisman as he imagines that he's sealing his heart into it. When Yamagami sees his work, he tells him that he has finally succeeded, which makes Minato really happy. In a change of scene, we see two women named Tsubaki and Fujino in an abandoned building, easily getting rid of powerful evil spirits. Kotetsu and Harima approach them just then, and Tsubaki informs them that they've done all they can with their weapons and spiritual powers, so they now need the Jade One's talismans. Harima gives them two talismans he got from Minato, and both Tsubaki and Fujino are amazed to see the power they hold. Three more women come running to them just then, and they all ask Harima to give them talismans as well, since they're being chased by countless evil spirits. Even Kotetsu thinks that these are a lot of evil spirits, so Harima doesn't hesitate and gives them all a talisman. With only 3 talismans, they're able to dispel the evil spirits in a matter of seconds, and with that, they finally clear the area. The women sigh in relief, realizing that they've been saved by these talismans, so they're very thankful to the Jade One. Kotetsu just observes them and tells Harima that these girls in his family are pretty, but not exactly quiet and reserved. Right after getting rid of the evil spirits, all they talk about is taking a long bath and binge-watching movies. Tsubaki clarifies that before that, they must wipe out the evil spirits, so he asks Harima for more talismans. He informs her that he only has 1 more left, so Tsubaki asks him to go immediately. Before he can leave to get more talismans, the rest of the girls approach him, knowing that he's going to meet the Jade One. They're all curious about what he's like, but they assume it's a man, so they ask Harima if he's good-looking. Fujino stops them and asks them to cut Harima some slack, since their dear brother has no understanding of what makes a man handsome. Kotetsu can't hold his laugh when he hears that, but Harima tries to ignore their comments and simply leaves. He tries to mentally prepare himself to visit Minato, but as soon as he steps into the house, he feels a powerful pressure coming from multiple kami, even stronger than the last time he was there. By the time he gets to the garden, Harima is already breathless, and Minato doesn't understand why. Harima simply brushes it off and asks him about the talismans he had asked him for. Just then, he sees water splashing splashing in the pond, which makes him wonder if the spirit animals are raging out of anger or something like that. Minato denies it, but he doesn't know how to explain that it is actually Uryu simply playing and jumping around in the pond as Reiki takes a nap on a rock. He just asks Harima not to worry about it, but since he doesn't explain a thing, Harima is just shocked to know that Minato doesn't even bat an eye at the raging spirit animals. As he silently admires him, Minato gives him the talismans he made and explains that he actually received a new power the other day. Using that, he sealed the elimination power into the talismans, so the power won't leak out, and its effect should last longer. Harima is surprised to hear this, so he thanks him for the effort and accepts the talismans. As they speak, he can't hide the pain he feels in his shoulder, and Minato mentions that he looks tired. Harima doesn't deny it and explains that there has been an outbreak of evil spirits lately. Just then, Fujin and Raijin show up to visit Minato, since it has been a while already. Minato gladly greets them, and even Fujin mentions that Harima looks quite exhausted. Raijin agrees with him, and since he feels kind of bad for him, he says that he could give him an electric shock to make him feel better. Harima can't see or hear anything, so Minato informs him that Raijin wants to give him an electric shock. That clearly takes Harima off guard, and before he can say anything, Raijin places a hand on his shoulder and gives him a strong electric shock, making him scream in pain. Minato panics when Harima passes out on the spot, and Raijin wonders if it was too strong, perhaps. Yamagami simply enjoys his sweets, as always, not even fazed about the whole situation at all, as Minato tries to help Harima come back to life. The next day, Minato decides to go shopping with Yamagami, but he's still worried about Harima, hoping that he's doing okay. Yamagami reassures him and tells him that the rest is up to him, so he doesn't have to worry. Leaving that aside, he mentions that he's looking forward to the new Sakura Mochi from Echizente, so he wants to get home quickly to try it. Minato agrees, but he suddenly stops walking when he senses something strange around the area, and the air starts feeling heavy. Before he can react, an abandoned kami realm appears right behind him, and it pulls in both him and Yamagami. After they fall into an unknown place, Yamagami wonders what's the matter with himself, and explains that he was distracted by the thought of Sakura Mochi. Minato simply observes his surroundings and mentions that this must be the kami realm of a god that's fallen. Yamagami confirms it and informs him that this was created by someone who's not that strong. They don't know where this kami is though, so Minato asks him how they'll get out of this place. Yamagami tells him that he just has to tear open the space with his power of wind, so Minato decides to give it a try. However, before he does anything, he asks Yamagami what will happen to the kami who created this if they get out of here. Yamagami explains that if they let it stay abandoned, impurity will amplify, and eventually, it will start to affect its surroundings. He knows that Minato can't possibly just leave it alone, because he's too nice to say no. Minato agrees, but Yamagami tells him that that's very much like him, so it isn't a surprise. Without wasting any more time, Minato decides to look for the kami who created this place. As he walks around with Yamagami, he comes across a rusty sword surrounded by dark miasma. Minato wonders if that's the kami they're looking for, and Yamagami lets him know that it was originally a sword. For a moment, Minato thinks that it was the god of swords or something like that, but Yamagami clarifies that man-made objects are not natural dwellings for divine spirits. He explains that this is a divine spirit channeled into a sword by humans, which is why he said it was originally a sword. For some reason, Minato's chest feels tight when he looks at it, so he assumes that the kami is angry. Yamagami admits that it seems that way, and he asks him what he will do now, wanting to know if he'll eliminate him. Minato gives it some thought and mentions that this kami is probably angry because it wasn't respected. Yamagami asks him what makes him say that, and Minato explains that the sword is rusty all over, so it's clear that it wasn't taken care of. After all, if it was cherished and worshipped, it wouldn't look like this right now. Yamagami confirms it, so Minato tells him that he doesn't want to eliminate this kami, and he is going to try and purify it with the new talisman instead. As soon as he pulls out the new talisman, his power starts shining all over the place, but it doesn't immediately fix the problem, since the impurity is incredible. Despite how difficult it seems, Yamagami tells him that he's doing a good job, because the normal talisman would have lost its effectiveness already, unlike this one. Once Minato finishes using the talisman, he admits that the power to seal things was really helpful. It apparently helped dispel all the dark miasma surrounding the sword, though it still looks rusty. Yamagami asks him to leave the rest to him, though he clarifies that he has never looked after another kami before, so he doesn't know what will happen. Minato is a little taken off guard by that comment, and he tells him that that doesn't make him feel assured at all. Despite that, Yamagami ignores his concerns and touches the sword, making it shine brightly. The light blinds Minato for a brief moment, but when he opens his eyes again, he's surprised to see that the kami is entirely gone now. Yamagami explains that he rescued the kami, so everything is fine now, which makes Minato feel relieved. However, that feeling doesn't last long, because the whole place soon begins collapsing. Huge rocks start falling all around them, so Yamagami explains that this place will disappear soon, and he must use the power of wind right away to get them out of there as soon as possible. Minato complies and immediately gets to work, and while he tries to figure out a way to escape the place with his power, Kotetsu gets rid of the evil spirits in an abandoned building somewhere else. Since there are a lot of evil spirits, he summons his familiar, number 5, a giant whale that swallows them all in a matter of seconds. Soon enough, the area is completely cleared, so Kotetsu praises the whale, saying that it did a good good job. However, the whale just complains in response, making him understand that it is already full and it can't possibly swallow more evil spirits. To make things worse, more evil spirits surround him in no time, so Kotetsu starts wondering what's taking Ichijo and Shiori so long. Meanwhile, Ichijo is also completely surrounded by evil spirits, but he has no way of defending himself. Just then, Shiori shows up with several talismans and saves him in time, getting rid of the evil spirits. Even though she just saved him, all Ichijo does is complain, saying that she's too slow to rescue him. He almost calls her adorable accidentally, but he quickly takes his words back and tells her that she has gained weight, so that's why she was slow to get here. Ichijo clarifies that she's dragging him down more than before, but before he can continue talking, he hears the sound of a bell, and that immediately brings him flashbacks from that nightmare Yamagami made him live. Ichijo panics instantly, and Shiori is glad to see that this trick works like a charm, since she just has to play the sound of a bell on her phone. While she enjoys messing with him, Tsubaki and the rest of the girls deal with the evil spirits outside, but they soon realize that they're running out of spiritual power, and they're already out of talismans. They're all surrounded right now, and even though they don't know what to do, Tsubaki asks them to remain calm. Just then, Harima shows up with a new talisman and gets rid of the evil spirits, saving the girls in no time. Tsubaki is surprised to see the new talisman, since he exercised so much with it, and yet the power is still there. Harima explains that they're new talismans with the elimination power sealed in, so they will last longer than usual. The girls are amazed by the Jade One's power, and they all wish they could meet him. Just then, a bright jade light blinds them all, and even though they can't see anything, they know that it's the Jade One. Tsubaki quickly puts on sunglasses and tells him that he has their gratitude. Minato is just confused to see that they ended up in a strange spot after getting out of the abandoned Kami realm, and he's surprised to see Harima surrounded by beautiful women. Yamagami explains that they must be relatives, and to them, what he has in his hand must be blindingly bright so they can't see a thing. Minato simply decides to go home, but when he sees Kotetsu's hat, he remembers the mysterious man he saw when he was a kid. Despite the resemblance, he's sure that it can't be the same person, so he quickly forgets about it. A strong wind almost blows Kotetsu's hat away, so he immediately secures it on his head and explains that it's his old man's trademark since he was an exorcist. When Yamagami gets home, he finally enjoys the sweets Minato bought, and they're so good that they even help him go back to his normal self. Minato then sees a sphere that comes out of his fur, and when Yamagami tells him that it's the divine spirit that was in the sword, he decides to put it somewhere in the garden so it can rest and get better soon. Sometime later, Minato returns home after an exhausting shopping day, feeling worn out due to the unbearable heat outside. He sighs in relief as soon as he sets a foot inside, saying that he thought he was going to die out there. Yamagami admits that the heat these days is certainly abnormal, but this garden is a Kami realm, so it is always nice as it should be. With that in mind, he decides to make some renovations to the garden to make it more comfortable. Minato tells him that he probably shouldn't do that, because if he overuses his power again, then he'll shrink. Yamagami asks him not to worry and uses his power to turn the pond into a stream. Minato is surprised to see that the water is actually flowing now, and he admits that it really changes the feeling of the garden. Despite that, Yamagami says that he still thinks that it needs something else, so he makes the stream larger and then decides that it needs a bridge. After creating the bridge, he says that it's not the best spot and decides to move it somewhere else, using his power again. Minato tries to warn him that he shouldn't use his power recklessly, but Yamagami stubbornly insists and moves the bridge one more time, trying to find the perfect spot. Even after finding the perfect spot for it, he says that something is still missing, and it's the sound of the water. Minato doesn't know what he's talking about, but before he can stop him, Yamagami uses his power to create a waterfall in the garden. That certainly surprises Minato, and he admits that the sound of the waterfall sure is soothing, and it feels nice and cool in an instant. However, when he turns to look at Yamagami, Minato is shocked to see that he's turned Chihuahua-sized again for overusing his power. Yamagami roars and reminds him that he's a mountain god, not a Chihuahua, but Minato thinks that even his roar sounds adorable now. The Martins soon arrive to scold Yamagami, and Sari reminds him that he's asked him many times not to overuse his power. Tarika agrees and reminds him that he always ends up in that pathetic state because he gets carried away. Even Utsugi is concerned now, because he's gotten even smaller than them, and they're his minions. Yamagami assures them that this is not a big deal, because even small, he is still him, and he thinks that the garden is actually rather elegant now. Minato asks him why he's so obsessed with renovating this garden, and Yamagami simply explains that it's his hobby, so he just wanted to adjust it for the season. That surprises Minato a little, so he asks him if he really can do that even though he neglects his own mountain, leaving it totally unkempt. Yamagami clarifies that the beauty of nature is in letting it be as it is, and while Minato can understand that, he mentions that it must be inconvenient to be so small, so they have to turn him back to normal. Despite that, Yamagami assures him that there is no need to rush, so they can just enjoy the garden now. Minato then notices Uryu enjoying the new waterfall, letting him know that he likes that spot, and Torika admits that he seems really at home there. After that, Minato checks on the sphere Yamagami brought and mentions that the god they rescued from the Kami realm hasn't woken up at all since then. The Martins tell him that he doesn't need to worry, since the god must be a little fatigued, and they should wake up soon enough. Minato then checks on Ho-Oh and mentions mentions that he seems tired as well, but he's glad that he can rest well in the garden. The martins suddenly notice something moving in the stream, so they quickly call Minato to check it out. When Minato approaches the stream, he's surprised to see koi fish in the water, and it makes him wonder how they grace them with their presence. Yamagami tells him that they seem to have gotten lost here, though Minato doesn't understand where they're going since it's a dead end down the stream. To his surprise, the koi fish start ascending the waterfall, later flying and ascending into the sky. However crazy it may sound, Minato doesn't understand a thing, but the martins and Yamagami simply say goodbye to the koi fish, asking them not to get lost here again. That was completely unexpected, but Minato then remembers that there was a legend that said if koi successfully ascended a waterfall, it would become a dragon. Yamagami informs him that these koi fish are also the minions of a god, and it seems they're from the next town over. That reminds Minato of Tsumugi, who said she was from the neighboring mountain. He hasn't seen her since she last visited, but he hopes she's doing okay. Yamagami mentions that the peach that Minion brought was bitter, so he doesn't understand how they can dare make him eat low-quality food. Minato asks him if he's not on good terms with the neighboring god, and when Yamagami tells him that he isn't, he wonders what kind of god it could be. The sky suddenly is covered with dark clouds, and Uryu immediately leaves the waterfall to see the huge dragon approaching the garden. Minato is shocked by the sight, wondering if the koi who ascended the waterfall really turned into a dragon. The dragon soon comes down with a roar, and Minato panics when he sees how huge it is. Yamagami asks him not to panic and explains that the dragon is a friend of Uryu's. The martins suddenly ask him to close his eyes, so Minato braces himself before a bright light blinds them all. Right after that, he notices that the intimidating dragon shrunk, and it is now as small as Uryu. The martins quickly translate the dragon's words, saying that he wants to know if he can come in. Minato invites him in without a doubt and tells him that it's a pleasure to have him here. The dragon then gives him a small box, and Utsugi translates his words, informing Minato that the dragon wants to give him a token of friendship. Yamagami asks him to take it, so Minato gladly accepts it, just to see that the dragon wants to give him a second gift. After the second, the dragon also gives him a third, fourth, and even fifth gift, to the point that Minato can't hold all the boxes in his arms anymore. Minato is a little overwhelmed by the amount of gifts, so he tries to tell the dragon that he's grateful, but he thinks that this is more than enough. The dragon doesn't understand why, but he decides to stop with the gifts and enjoys a good cup of wine with his friend, Uryu. After having enough, he decides that it's time to leave, so Minato apologizes for being unable to offer him more, and asks him to visit again sometime. Once the dragon leaves, he can't help but wonder what the gifts are, so Yamagami asks him to open them. Minato opens the first box, and the martins are excited to see delicious mooncakes filled with sweet bean paste. Minato tells Yamagami that eating this might get him back to his normal size, so he should give it a try. Yamagami agrees, just because he wants to enjoy the sweets, and says that he will eat it without hesitation in that case. After eating the first mooncake, he admits that the flavor is not bad, and he really likes it. Despite this, Minato notices that he doesn't seem to be growing back to his normal size, so perhaps it'll take more than that. Tarika opens another box and finds a rare snack, and the others find Chinese tea in another box. When Minato sees all of this, he decides to open all the boxes full of different sweets and snacks, and asks Yamagami to have a feast, hoping that he can grow back to his normal size. Without a doubt, Yamagami enjoys the food and eats all the sweets, one after another. After a while, he eats the last mooncake, and says that it is extremely delectable, but the martins and Minato are disappointed to see that he hasn't grown back at all even after all that food. Seri mentions that he must eat more to regain his power, though Utsugi confesses that he wanted to taste at least one of the sweets he ate. Yamagami isn't concerned at all, so while they wonder what to do, he decides to take a nap. Minato knows that they can't just leave things like this, so he later goes shopping to the neighboring town to buy all the premium Japanese sweets money could buy. Yamagami admits that he can't wait to taste them, and Minato tells him that he'd like for him to grow back to his normal size soon. As they walk through the town, he notices the Inari shrine and asks Yamagami if this is the mountain where Tsumugi is. When Yamagami confirms it, Minato mentions that it's a cute little mountain, and he thought gods only reside on big mountains. Yamagami explains that the size doesn't matter, because they're truly everywhere. Before he can finish his sentence, Minato is suddenly pulled in towards the shrine, making him panic and wonder if it's another abandoned kami realm that's pulling him in. Yamagami immediately steps in the way and asks the god of the shrine how she can dare behave so selfishly. With this, the god finally lets go of Minato, but Yamagami is still angry, especially when the god shows up in front of him in the flesh. Minato is surprised when he sees a nine-tailed fox right in front of them, and he wonders if it's a yokai. Yamagami informs him that it's actually a god, the god of this mountain, Tenko, and Tsumugi is her minion. The god instantly disappears after that, and Minato once again asks Yamagami if he's not on good terms with Tenko. Yamagami walks away and clarifies that it is neither good nor bad, and she simply invited him here. Minato doesn't understand why though, since he's never walked by here until today, and he certainly has never met her. Yamagami informs him that she actually does know him, since she sees everything her minion does. He doesn't know if it's to see him in person or to get a hold of his Inarazushi, but she apparently wanted to invite him to her shrine. Minato admits that it was a rather aggressive invitation, and if she could invite him normally, he wouldn't mind visiting her. Yamagami warns him that there is no guarantee that he can come back, so Minato actually decides to pass. In a change of scene, we see Harima talking to Kotetsu about the exorcist in the neighboring town. He explains that when they eliminated the evil spirit at the abandoned hospital before, he saw a man named Ansho. Kotetsu knows that he's an exorcist from the neighboring town, so he doesn't understand why he was in their jurisdiction. Harima is just as clueless, but Shiori later informs him that she looked into it because something about it bothered her. Apparently, the man called Ansho has often been seen in Hojo with someone who appears to be his subordinate, though she doesn't know what he's doing yet. Kotetsu admits that that's concerning, so he decides that he'll look into it as well. We later see Ansho and his subordinate visiting a granny who says that her back has been hurting. Ansho assures her that it must be because of an evil spirit, and his subordinate explains that they're exorcists, so they can see stuff like that. The poor granny easily believes in their words, so she asks them what can be done about this. Ansho smiles and asks her not to worry, showing her a cheap-looking talisman and saying that it will eliminate the evil spirit for her. He claims that it works like magic and mentions that she can have 11 talismans for the price of 10. The granny easily falls for the scam and decides to buy the talismans, thinking that it will get rid of the supposed evil spirits and the pain in her back. Later that day, after getting back home, Yamagami enjoys all the sweets Minato bought for him, but Minato is concerned to see that he's not growing back even after all this food. Despite how worried he is, Yamagami reminds him that he doesn't need to rush, because he'll grow back eventually. Minato can't believe how carefree Yamagami is about the whole thing, but before he can think about it further, he notices that a lot of branches have fallen from the sacred tree. Yamagami tells him that it's proof that this Kusunoki is growing, and that gives Minato an idea. He takes a chisel and starts carving some wood from the sacred tree, but for some reason, Kirin stares at him with fear. Oryu approaches him to ask him what he's scared of, so Kirin explains that Minato is using a weapon of deadly force, and he has no idea how many creatures humans have killed and wounded since the dawn of history. That makes him think that Minato is planning to slaughter his kind with that chisel, so he's freaking out because of that. Reiki interrupts him with irritation, asking him to shut up and saying that he's trying to nap. Yamagami then approaches Minato to see what he's doing, and Minato explains that it's a keychain for the room keys for the customers at his parents' hot spring inn. He thought he'd give it a try making some with the branches of the Kusunoki, sealing in the elimination power. Once he finishes the last one, Yamagami mentions that it's perfect for a charm against evil spirits. Minato clarifies that the last one is for him, as an amulet, though he's not sure if it'll be any help to him. Yamagami gladly accepts the amulet, and Minato tells him that he hopes he grows back soon. Just then, a squirrel shows up near the garden, and Yamagami informs him that it wants a piece of wood he carved. Minato tells him that the one he gave him was the last one, but Yamagami informs him that the squirrel says it'd be happy with a failure. With that in mind, Minato gives the squirrel one of the failed amulets, and the little thing happily leaves with it, climbing a tree to see its offspring, who has been affected by a dark miasma. Even if it was a failed amulet, its power is enough to dispel the dark miasma, making the little squirrel feel better in a matter of seconds. Later that day, Minato decides to prepare delicious inarizushi for everyone, and Yamagami says that they have to eat quickly, or a certain fox might find her way here again. Minato knows that he's talking about Tsumugi, but he tells him that he doubts she'll show up so often. However, just before they can start eating, Tsumugi shows up, so Minato asks her if the aroma of the inarizushi lured her in. Tsumugi plays dumb and tells him that she has no idea what he's talking about, and she then asks him if she can come in. Minato gladly invites her in and tells her that he made a simple kind of inarizushi with just white sesame mixed in, but he also has ones with soba noodles instead of vinegar rice. Tsumugi admits that she's never seen or had something like it, so she would love to try. Just as she's about to take a bite, she freezes in place and remembers the reason she's here. She quickly explains that she came here today to apologize because the other day, her master god, Tenko, was rather aggressive with her invitation, so she's very sorry. Minato clarifies that it didn't bother him, so she doesn't have to worry, and he actually thinks it was lucky that he got to see a fox god with many tails. Tsumugi explains that the number of tails is proportional to the strength of their power, so her master Tenko is strong because the mountain shrine where she resides received the most worshippers in this region. She mentions that they're grateful for their visits, but she also admits that the drawback is that it gets a bit noisy. Tsumugi suddenly loses consciousness mid-sentence, and the mark on her forehead turns red. 9 tails grow on her back, letting them know that now Tenko is the one speaking, and she says that even if the outside may be noisy, her kami realm is nice and quiet. She asks Minato to visit her, saying that he should bring those inarizushi, of course, because she's interested in that soba inari of his now. Yamagami calls her a glutton, saying that she's a truly greedy vixen, but Tenko reminds him that that's coming from someone who'd stop an eruption because of some stupid sweets. He tells her that unlike her, he's not low enough to sneak into someone else's kami realm for food, and he hasn't given her permission to step in here. Tenko clarifies that he allowed her minion to come in, which means she's allowed to come in too. Yamagami asks her to stop interpreting things in a way that's convenient for her, but Tenko tells him that she doesn't need his permission to enter here, because if Minato approves, anyone can have access to this garden. She suddenly gets aggressive and clarifies that it's very unpleasant to be looked down upon by him. Yamagami gets just as aggressive aggressive and attacks without hesitation, but Tenko simply blocks the attack and mocks him for being so weak and pathetic. She tells him that right now, his power is less than that of a mosquito, not even a fly, so he should just give up. Yamagami attacks her again, clearly offended, but Tenko simply blocks it once again and tells him that in his state, the body of her Tsumuhi is more than enough to deal with him, so she's bound to prevail over him. Yamagami tells her that he'll show her what he's made of, and he immediately jumps at her to hit her with his head. Tenko withstands his attack and insults his pathetic state, saying that he should take a good look at himself in the mirror. Minato can do nothing but watch as they fight in the sky, and his attempts to stop Yamagami fail despite all his efforts. Tenko is just having fun fighting Yamagami, and she says that she can't believe how weak he's gotten, even worse than 500 years ago. Yamagami asks her to let him show her his true power, but Tenko tells him that it's too late, and she throws a big attack at him to finish the fight. The attack is easily dodged by Yamagami, but when he sees that it's about to hit Minato, he gets in the way and receives the blow for him without hesitation. Minato panics when he sees him falling to the ground, but Yamagami quickly stands back up. Tenko tells him that this makes their 33,332nd battle, and it's her 22,222nd victory. Yamagami asks her why she would keep tally of something so silly, but Tenko tells him that maybe he's gotten weak because he's hanging out with that human there. Yamagami asks her who's the one seducing the priests of her own shrine, and Tenko actually feels offended by that, so she clarifies that humans fall for her without her doing anything. She explains that she's been in contact with countless humans before, so she can tell if he gets himself involved in humans too much, it will eventually destroy him. Tenko disappears right after that, so Minato approaches Yamagami to check on him, wanting to know if he's okay, since he overused his power again. Yamagami dismisses his concern and apologizes about the amulet he gave him, since it broke when he received that attack. Minato asks him not to worry and clarifies that he can always make another one. Leaving that aside, he decides to address what Tenko said before she left, and asks him if he can continue to stay with him. Yamagami tells him that he can without a doubt, and reminds him that he's here of his own volition. Meanwhile, Ansho and his subordinate celebrate after successfully tricking more people with worthless pieces of paper as talismans. Just when they thought they were getting away with this, Kotetsu's familiars suddenly attack them, and Harima warns them that they know all of their evil deeds. Ansho and his subordinate run away as soon as they realize they've been caught, not wanting to deal with Onmyoji. After a while running non-stop, they end up in the forest, completely breathless and frustrated, but that's when they find one of Minato's discarded amulets, the one the squirrel dropped after using it. A few days later, Minato receives a box of summer oranges from his mother, and as soon as he steps into the house, the martins are all around him, enjoying the fresh smell of the fruit. As always, he tells them that they can eat as much as they want, but when he sees Yamagami, he can't help but worry, since he still hasn't grown back to normal. Minato hears him sigh, and that only increases his concern, because Yamagami seems more low energy than usual, and it makes him wonder if he's feeling down after losing to Tenko. Maybe he can't grow back because he's feeling down, so Minato decides to do something to cheer him up. He tells him that he ran out of Japanese sweets, and asks him if he'd like to go out and eat something tasty with him. The martins approach them as soon as they hear that, and Sari tells Yamagami that it might not be a bad idea to go out with Minato. Tarika agrees and tells him that they'll house sit while he's away, so he doesn't have to worry. Yamagami easily trusts them and decides to go out with Minato, while his minions stay at home. Once they step out of the house, Minato tries to be attentive and asks him if he wants to sit on his shoulder instead of walking. Yamagami is a little surprised by the offer, but Minato tells him that he just wants to do anything to ease a god's burden, so he easily accepts and admits that it's not bad. Minato walks past a small shrine, not noticing that someone put fresh flowers there. As they walk around town, he asks Yamagami where he wants to go, since there are many restaurants nearby, and some of them look promising. Yamagami admits that it's hard to pick one, and Minato tells him that they should eat at the place he likes the most. Before finding a proper restaurant, Yamagami gets distracted when he notices the Musashi Publishing building. Minato sees the sign and realizes that it's the publisher of the local magazine Yamagami likes to read all the time. Yamagami mentions that it was just a shack 100 years ago, but Minato is just surprised to know that this publisher had such a long history. Without wasting any time, Yamagami decides to walk into the building, and that takes Minato off guard, since he doesn't understand what he's going to do there. Yamagami simply explains that he has something to say to them, so Minato has no choice but to go after him. Meanwhile, Tawada, an employee from the company, comes out after his shift, complaining and saying that he literally has no luck. After all, he gets possessed by evil spirits all the time, and his local magazine's sales aren't growing. The current Musashi Publishing president finds him and asks him if he's off to gather some information, and Tawada informs him that it's for a special feature on Japanese sweets. The president tells him that last month's special feature on chunky bean paste was wonderful, so if it reaches Yamagami, he might visit their town again, and the previous president would be happy too. After the president leaves to attend to a meeting, Tawada wonders if his article really is reaching this so-called Yamagami. Before he can exit the building, an evil spirit suddenly appears right behind him, making him freeze on the spot. Tawada looks back, terrified and wondering if something possessed him again. The evil spirit grabs him by the neck and strangles him, giving him no chance to fight back. Just then, the door opens and lets in in a bright light, erasing the evil spirit in a second. Tawada catches his breath, and when he opens his eyes, he sees Yamagami right in front of him. Minato runs after him, unaware of what just happened, and tells him that he shouldn't just barge in a building like that. Tawada is just shocked to know that he really is Yamagami, despite his size, and Minato is more surprised to know that he can see Yamagami. No one should be able to see him, but Yamagami explains that he's allowing Tawada to see him now. Tawada tells him that he's surprised that he actually exists, but he thinks he's awfully cute too. Yamagami reminds him that he's the mountain god, and asks him if he's the writer of the Japanese sweets articles. When Tawada confirms this, Yamagami lets him know that he always looks forward to the articles on Japanese sweets. Tawada is completely moved to know that the Yamagami really is reading his articles, and it even makes him tear up a little. Without wasting any time, he asks Yamagami to meet their president, because he's been waiting and waiting for him, as well as all of the employees. Tawada quickly uses the phone to communicate with the president and the others, letting them know that the Yamagami is here. The president abruptly forgets about the meeting and shows up with the other employees, wondering what's going on. Tawada informs them that the Yamagami is here with them right now, though the others can't really see anything until Yamagami speaks up. Minato tells him that they can't tell that it's him in that form since they've never seen him so small. Despite this, as soon as they see him, the president and the rest of the employees kneel before Yamagami, saying that they've been waiting for him. The president mentions that the founder and the previous president, Chairman Musashi, has told him so much about him. He heard that after he helped out Chairman Musashi, he used to take him out to sweets shops. Yamagami confirms this, saying that they used to frequent sweets shops together back then. Minato is surprised to know that, because it means that they were really close. The president hesitantly asks him if he still reads their magazine, and everyone gets really happy when Yamagami tells them that he does. Yamagami explains that he's come here today to say something about it, which is that the next special feature should be about smooth bean paste, not chunky paste. The president and the whole team of employees immediately accept, happy to please Yamagami in whatever he wants to read about. The president wastes no time and orders to run a special feature on smooth paste in the next issue, so all the employees get to work, ready to research every smooth paste product in town. Minato exits the building with Yamagami, still surprised to know that he knew someone other than the owner of Echigoya. Yamagami tells him that back then, there were more people who could see those that were not human. Minato is just glad to see that Yamagami's spirits seem to be up now, so he decides to keep it going. He notices a nice smell coming from a restaurant nearby, and Yamagami informs him that it's the smell of curry. That sounds really good to Minato, so he decides to go to that restaurant with Yamagami to eat something tasty. The waitress welcomes Minato with a smile and places 2 menus on the table, asking him to let her know when he's ready to order. Minato is a little confused when he sees the 2 menus because she shouldn't be able to see Yamagami. Yamagami clarifies that not only she cannot see him, but she also has no power to detect his presence. Without saying another word, he uses his power to move one of the menus, opening it in the air. Minato panics and quickly grabs the menu, saying that people will notice him if he does things like that. Yamagami calmly asks him not to worry about the eyes of others, and tells him that he should take a good look around. Minato takes a look at the other tables, and notices a woman alone with 2 cups of tea on her table. The small cup of tea suddenly levitates, as if a small, invisible being is drinking from it. Minato is clearly confused, so Yamagami explains that even though it's small, that is a god as well. With this in mind, Minato glances at the other table, and wonders if the man sitting there is with a god too, or perhaps a yokai, though he can't really sense anything. Yamagami tells him that, in fact, a lot of yokai are surrounding that man. That only confuses Minato even more, because he should be able to see yokai, but he can't see even one right now. Yamagami reminds him that it's been a while since he left his parents' home, so his perception must have dulled. Minato now just wonders what kind of place this is, since gods and yokai are hanging out here so calmly. Yamagami reminds him that he's with gods all the time himself, so he shouldn't be so surprised. He quickly puts that aside and asks him if he's going to order curry, since that's what they're here for. Minato wastes no time and decides to order a plate of curry, so both him and Yamagami enjoy the food together a few minutes later. Yamagami is completely pleased by the flavor, saying that the spice level is just right, so it's not bad. Minato is glad to see that Yamagami likes it, but he momentarily forgets about the food when he sees a pair of scissors moving on their own. He quickly tells Yamagami that the scissors of that tailor at the other table are moving on their own. Yamagami informs him that that has turned into a Tsukumagami. He explains that when a tool is treasured for a very long time, it's imbued with a soul and becomes a Tsukumagami. Yamagami also mentions that there is one in his house, even though he didn't notice before, and it's the wind chime in the garden. Minato tells him that that wind chime never moved on its own, but Yamagami clarifies that it wishes only to exist as a wind chime, which is why he allows it to live there. He should use it fully again this year, and maintain it every now and then, because it would like that. Minato easily accepts, saying that he will take good care of it from now on. Just then, a customer exits the restaurant, but Minato notices that the bell at the entrance didn't ring, even though it rang earlier. Yamagami informs him that that bell is also a Tsukumagami, and he assumes it rings to alert the staff when something that's not human enters the restaurant. Minato now understands why the waitress gave them 2 menus, and he realizes that this is a diner where gods and yokai are allowed to enter. While Yamagami enjoys his food, the Martins suddenly communicate with him, informing him that uninvited guests have arrived and they really stink. Yamagami just asks them to keep an eye on them, so the Martins quietly observe Ansho and his subordinate Eno. Eno complains about how humid the air is and Ansho agrees, but when he checks the nameplate on Minato's house, he confirms that it's the same material used to make the wooden tag they found. Eno continues complaining, saying that the rice field here smells bad and he just can't take this stench, so they should get rid of rice fields. Ansho reminds him that he couldn't eat his favorite food if they did that, so Eno quickly forgets about it since his favorite food is rice. Leaving that aside, Ansho tells him that they have to talk to the guy who lives in this house so they can buy these wooden tags cheap. Only a few minutes have passed, and the Martins can already tell that these two are rotten to the core. Sayori mentions that they seem to be after Minato's wooden tags, and Utsugi tries to impersonate Yamagami and says that they reek more than the rice fields. Sayori explains that they say the souls of rotten humans have a terrible stench, and even his eyes can feel it because it's really pungent. Utsugi admits that he's never seen anyone like them, and the stench is really bad. Ansho tries to ring the doorbell a few times, but since they get no answer, Eno uses a lever to force open the gate. The Martins can't stand their stench anymore, so the three of them grab some summer oranges to try and make it a little more bearable. When he sees what Ansho and his subordinate are trying to do, Sayori mentions that he didn't know such worthless humans existed. Yamagami simply tells them that they can do what they feel is best, so the Martins agree and decide to make them regret ever coming here. Eno can't possibly force the gate open no matter how hard he tries, but when Ansho decides to try opening it himself, the door simply slides open on its own. That leaves them very confused, but Ansho assumes that the people from the countryside are careless like that. The two of them knock on the door of the house a few times and confirm that nobody's home. To their surprise, not only the gate, but even the door is unlocked, so they easily get into the house, saying that the guy who lives here must be really careless. They notice the scent of oranges as soon as they step in, but Ansho pays no mind to it and says that if he's not here, then they must look through inside the house. Eno follows him until they reach a long, empty corridor, and he mentions that this is a really big house. Ansho opens the door at the end of the corridor, just to find a room completely identical. They do this a few more times, but they can't find anything but long corridors to no end. Eno soon starts wondering what's wrong with this house, since it has so many identical corridors for some reason. Ansho stops and asks him if he hasn't realized yet, because this is strange, no matter how he looks at it. There can't be such a long corridor in this house after all, and the scent of oranges is getting stronger. While they wonder what's going on, the Martins happily enjoy the scent of their summer oranges, feeling lucky to have them. Torika admits that the summer oranges truly saved them, because without them, the stench of these guys would have ruined their noses. Eno notices that the scent of oranges became even stronger, but they soon see something even more concerning. The corridor starts disappearing for some reason, so they quickly run away before they're consumed. No matter how fast they run, it soon catches up with them until they're completely consumed. Both Ansho and Eno scream, but when they open their eyes again, they realize that they're outside the house, having no idea what just happened. None of them understand a thing, but they don't stop for a second to question it and immediately run away, wanting to get far away from this house as soon as possible. The Martins enjoy their oranges, glad to know that it worked, and that they taught them to feel fear when they smell the scent of summer oranges. Sayori mentions that they'll launch a citrus attack when they come here again, and Utsugi tells him that maybe he'll suggest to Minato he should put an orange-scented air freshener at the entrance. As Ansho and Eno run away from the house in fear, one of Kotetsu's familiars sees them from behind a tree, and it quickly retreats to inform Kotetsu. A while later, Minato exits the restaurant with Yamagami, who admits that the curry was rather delicious, so they should come here again sometime. Minato is glad to know that he liked it, but even though he thought he managed to make Yamagami happy, he still hasn't grown back, which worries him a little. There's not a lot he can do about it now, so he decides to go back home, since Sayori and the others are waiting for them. Yamagami informs him that while they're away, they seem to have gotten rid of some uninvited guests, and he never thought that his summer oranges would come in handy. Minato has no idea what he's talking about, but he pays it no mind and lets him hop onto his shoulder as he walks back home. Yamagami seems to be enjoying it, and he lets him know that riding on his shoulder is rather comfortable. Minato then notices an old lady placing some flowers at the shrine from before and praying to that god. Yamagami approaches the old lady, who's praying to the great kami. When she sees Minato, she asks him if he came here to make an offering to the Jizo statue. Before he can say anything, the old lady's daughter comes running and tells her that she was worried about her, since she came here by herself again. Minato stops them before they leave to ask what the great kami is, since it's the first time he hears it. The woman informs him that it's the god of the mountain her mother worships, and mentions that she used to tell her that the great kami lived on that mountain. That is why, even now, she comes to pay respect to the Jizo statue dedicated to the great kami. The woman says goodbye and leaves with her mother after saying that, and Minato is glad to know that people cherish Yamagami. When he turns back to see him, he's shocked to see that he's back to his normal self, with an even bigger presence. Yamagami tells him that it's just natural, because he's a mountain god. Despite how proud he is about that, Minato asks him to turn it down a bit because the light is hurting his eyes. Yamagami has no choice but to turn it down entirely, and he reminds him that he said he'd grow back eventually. Minato tells him that he's glad he's feeling better now, and mentions that he thought he didn't grow back at all because he was sad after losing to Tenko. Yamagami tells him that it wasn't like that, and like he always tells him, he only used his power too much. Minato is a little surprised by this, so he asks him why he seemed down this morning, and Yamagami tells him that the special feature of the magazine was chunky paste, so he was feeling bummed. With that clarified, Minato walks back home with a smile, feeling glad that Yamagami is feeling better. Deep down, he knows that maybe Yamagami grew back to normal because the people in this town believe in the existence of Yamagami. Later that day, Kotetsu's familiar informs him that Ansho and his subordinate were at Minato's house. Harima gets worried as soon as he hears that, but Kotetsu reassures him and informs him that the exorcists were totally outsmarted apparently. As they speak, Ansho and Eno get deep into the woods after running nonstop, and they're still wondering what all of that was. Eno tells him that they should go back home because nothing good has happened since they came to this town. Despite this, Ansho clarifies that he's not giving up yet, not until he makes a killing in this town. As soon as he says that, a giant abandoned kami realm opens in the sky, leaving them both speechless and confused. Sometime later, Harima decides to visit Minato, but as soon as he sets foot on the estate, Yamagami and the Martins make sure he feels an intense pressure like he's never felt before. Despite this, Harima tries his best to keep walking, and Yamagami is impressed to see that he's still standing, even after they increase the pressure. Minato realizes what they're doing, and when he welcomes Harima, he notices that Ho-Oh decided to join in too, putting more pressure on him by standing on his head. Harima greets him and mentions that today even his head feels heavy for some reason. Once they finally reach the garden, Harima tells Minato that the charms with elimination power have been helpful since their effects last longer. However, evil spirits have started to appear frequently in town lately, and they can't keep up, so they're handling it by posting the charms all over town. They keep on posting them, but evil spirits are still on the rise for some unknown reason, and they're currently looking into the cause. Minato is just glad to know that his charms are helping, and Harima decides to give him a token of gratitude for it. The amount of gifts surprises him a little, so Harima explains that it's from his sisters and cousins. He also mentions that he has a message from them, which is to give their regards to the Jade One. Minato is a little confused by the name, so Harima informs him that his elimination power emits a jade light, so they call him the Jade One. Minato had no idea about that, because that jade light isn't visible to his eyes. That aside, when he sees how excited Yamagami and the Martins are about all the gifts, he smiles and thanks Harima. Harima returns the smile, but he changes the subject and asks him if he happened to have two exorcists invade his house the other day. Minato isn't sure what he's talking about, but the Martins immediately assume that he's talking about the stinky pair from the other day. Tarika tells him that they were absolutely horrible, and Sari lets him know that they fought them off. Minato is surprised to hear that that really happened, and he tells Harima that the exorcists apparently did invade his house, but they were driven away. Harima warns him that they're persistent, so they might do something again, and he must continue to be vigilant. After he leaves, the Martins happily enjoy the treats Harima brought, but Yamagami is still thinking about what he said, and the fact that there are a lot of evil spirits in town now. He tells Minato that he senses something wicked at work, and he hopes it doesn't lead to bigger problems. Minato agrees, hoping that nothing bad happens, but as soon as these words leave his mouth, Yamagami informs him that something is about to happen. Just then, the pond starts glowing, and a strong current of water is shot upwards, just to let them see a guy with an 8-headed snake around him. Minato nervously greets him, but the snakes hiss at him, and the guy assumes that he's the human who's been receiving powers from gods. The way he speaks confuses Minato a little, making him wonder if this guy is the something wicked Yamagami mentioned. The idea is quickly discarded when he looks at Yamagami and sees him yawning and taking a nap, completely uninterested. The guy then mentions that his older sister told him all about him, so he was hoping to be impressed by a human his sister was willing to give her power to, but he turned out to be a failure. When Minato hears that, he quickly figures out that this guy's older sister is Amaterasu. He also finds out that the 8-headed snake is Yamata no Orochi, which means he must be Susanoo. Once he confirms this, Minato assures him that he takes good care of the power to seal things he received from Amaterasu, so he hopes he gives his regards to her. Susanoo easily agrees and apologizes for barging in without asking, saying that he'll give him something as an apology. In less than a second, he materializes a barrel of sake and tells him that it's his, so Minato thanks him and notices the instant interest of Reiki towards the sake. However, Orochi is also interested in the alcohol, so Susanoo scolds him and clarifies that the sake is not for him. Orochi hisses at him, calling him a brat and making his patience quickly run out. Minato stands back as he sees the argument unfold, realizing that Susanoo's boiling point is too low. The situation quickly escalates, and Susanoo summons a sword in his hand, asking Orochi if he wants to get beaten up again. Orochi challenges him, so he warns him that he'll chop off every single one of his heads. Without waiting another second, Susanoo charges at Orochi with his sword, and the snake easily dodges him. Minato gets concerned and tells Yamagami that they've got a problem, but Yamagami is too busy taking a nap, not caring at all. Having no other choice, Minato intervenes himself and warns them that there can't be any bloodshed here. Susanoo simply asks him why, and explains that when he chops Orochi's heads up, a sword will come out of their tail, which will be fun. Minato Minato assumes that he's talking about Kusanagi no Tsurugi, and Susanoo is surprised to see that he knows about it. He asks him if he wants to see the real thing, but Minato politely declines, not wanting to witness such a thing. Susanoo doesn't believe him because all men love that stuff and he shouldn't interrupt him. Without a doubt, he attacks Minato to get him out of the way, but Minato reacts in time and uses his power of wind to block the attack. Susanoo doesn't hide how impressed he is at that, and he admits that he's wielding the power of wind pretty well. Minato tells him that he still has much to learn, and Susanoo agrees, saying that he's still a weakling, so he is going to train him. That statement sounds more like a threat coming from him, so Minato immediately declines, saying that he wouldn't even dream of it. Susanoo admits that they can't do it here, so they'll have to go to his place. Minato once again tries to decline the offer, but Susanoo ignores him and simply drags him away with him, flying high into the sky. Yamagami finally opens his eyes, but he doesn't seem to mind, even though Minato is completely panicking. Susanoo just asks him to bear with him for a second and assures him that his place isn't far away. He opens a Kami realm with his sword and drags Minato with him, and all Yamagami says is that Susanoo really has no restraint. Orochi asks him to cut him some slack and explains that he hasn't had a playmate in ages. The two of them decide to go into the Kami realm as well, leaving the other gods behind in the garden. Meanwhile, Minato crashes into the Kami realm and complains, telling Susanoo that he could be a little more careful with how he handles him. Susanoo clarifies that if he was a young lady, he would gently carry him, but that isn't the case, and he's not doing that for a dude. Leaving that aside, he asks him to get up and explains that this is his Kami realm, so they can get down to business now. Minato has no way to escape, so he feels a little relieved when he sees Yamagami entering the Kami realm. Yamagami looks around and mentions that this place takes him back, and it's not a bad view. Orochi agrees, and tells him that he doesn't see a lot of houses of that type these days, because things keep on changing in the human world, so a trend comes and goes. Minato had thought that he was saved for a moment, but Yamagami is completely relaxed, making it clear that he's not planning to interfere. Susanoo yells at him and points his sword at him, asking him not to ignore him. Minato soon realizes that he has no other choice, so he quickly stands on guard, knowing that he'll have to do this. Once he's ready, Susanoo immediately attacks him, so he quickly blocks the attack with his power of wind and runs away. Susanoo chases after him, swinging his sword around and destroying the houses nearby with ease. Minato panics and tells him that he's overdoing it and he'll break everything in here if he keeps going. Susanoo easily dismisses his concern and asks him not to worry about it, saying that he can break it all to his heart's content because no one lives here anyway. Another one of his attacks makes Minato fall, so Susanoo catches up, and Minato just complains, saying that he doesn't even have a weapon, so it's not fair of him to swing at him with his sword. Susanoo tells him that his power of wind is half-assed, so he couldn't help it, and he doesn't know why he doesn't carry a weapon too anyway. Minato clarifies that he doesn't have one, and he has no plans to either. Susanoo doesn't like that answer at all, so he asks him if he's really content with those wimpy wind powers. Minato tells him that protecting himself and those around him is enough, so he won't choose to fight. Susanoo asks him if he actually thinks that breeze of his can protect those around him. He clarifies that he's the first human Fujin ever gave his power to, so if he's too weak, it'll make him look bad. Minato is surprised to know that he's the first one, so Susanoo explains that he's been around for quite some time, and he's never seen another human who received power from Fujin. Just then, Minato realizes that Susanoo himself was also a legendary great kami, so he decides to stand up and bow in respect, apologizing for being sassy with him. Susanoo doesn't understand why he's acting so respectfully all of a sudden, and he assumes it's because of what he said about having been around for some time. He suddenly points his sword at Minato again, asking him if he thinks he's an old man. Minato quickly clarifies that he would never call him elderly, but Susanoo yells at him and tells him that he's still young, so he's not old or senile. Yamagami suddenly speaks and agrees with him, saying that not long ago, Susanoo would cry his lungs out, missing his mother. Orochi confirms it, saying that he couldn't believe how loud he was about it too. Susanoo loses his patience and asks them to stop talking, but just then, he sees Orochi and Yamagami peacefully enjoying some good sake together. Minato also sees this, and he can't help but smile when he sees how well they get along. Susanoo asks him to stop smirking and immediately attacks him, so Minato has no choice but to dodge the attack once again, knowing that this is far from over. Meanwhile, Ansho and Ano walk around town, getting rid of all the charms Harima and the other Onmyoji have been posting. They want to get rid of all the charms, because that way there'll be more evil spirits, and the jobs to exorcise them will come flooding in. An evil spirit suddenly appears, but one of Kotetsu's familiars gets rid of it, and they soon realize that there are Onmyoji in the area. When they see Kotetsu, both Ansho and Ano quickly run away, wanting to get out of the place before they're seen. Kotetsu praises his familiars for eating so many evil spirits, but just then, he manages to see Ansho and Ano escaping, and that's when he notices the missing charm. Harima soon catches up and sees that a charm was torn down, but Kotetsu warns him that it's not just here, and several dozen of them have been removed. That would explain why the number of evil spirits doesn't seem to decrease, and it's all the work of those exorcists. Despite this, Harima still thinks there's something weird in this situation, because he understands why evil spirits won't decrease, but it doesn't explain why they keep increasing. Shiori suddenly approaches them running, letting letting them know that evil spirits are spawning from the empty lot nearby, and the area is filled with miasma. Neither Harima or Kotetsu understand how something like that is possible, but they waste no time and decide to follow Shiori to find out what's going on. Meanwhile, Minato continues running from Susanoo, not knowing what to do in this situation anymore. He's done nothing but running away, so he decides to try something different and attacks with his power of wind. Susanoo blocks the attack with his sword, glad to see that he's finally ready to do this. Minato realizes that he can easily read his long-distance attacks, so he has to get him close. Now it's Susanoo's turn to attack, so when he jumps at him, Minato doesn't move, waiting for the right moment to make his move. When Susanoo is finally close enough, Minato uses his power of wind and manages to push him back, taking him off guard. Susanoo stands back in shock for a moment, but he finally smiles and decides to approach him, saying that that wind wasn't too bad and that he's got more guts than he thought. With that, he decides to call it a day, but Minato is just surprised that he complimented him. Susanoo admits that he gave him a hard time, but it's actually impressive that a mere mortal can wield the power of a god at all. Minato thanks him and accepts the helping hand offered to him, but as Susanoo pulls him up, he clarifies that he's still far below Fujin's level. Minato thinks the comment was unnecessary, but Susanoo only laughs without any care, and then tells him that he gets hungry after exercising. They soon go back to Minato's house, where he prepares a meal for everyone to enjoy. Susanoo quickly eats all the food he finds on the table, enjoying all the different plates. He happily exclaims that he likes the taste of the simmered chicken and veggies and the crunchy lotus roots that sure soaked up the flavor. Minato thanks him for the compliments and mentions that it's just leftovers from last night's dinner. That said, Susanoo admits that the braised eggplants aren't the best, but he clarifies that they don't taste bad or anything, and it's simply not for him. Minato tells him that he couldn't be bothered, so he used the store-bought broth. Susanoo quickly complains and asks him why he's cutting corners, saying that he lacks attention to detail, especially with the attack from earlier. Minato doesn't understand what he's talking about, so he reminds him that he even gave him a compliment. However, Susanoo clarifies that he did no such thing, and he just thought he got slightly better. As they speak, Orochi peacefully takes a nap, but Reiki complains about how loud his snoring is, saying that it makes his sake taste bad. Aoru offers a simple solution, asking him if he'd like to cleanse his palate with some of his wine. As a good sake lover, Reiki immediately declines, so Kirin tells him that they should toast with beer in that case, because he also has some exotic fruits for dessert after their meal. Reiki cuts him off and declines once again, while Uryu complains about how much that exotic fruit of his stinks. Kirin just judges them, saying that they're both such cautious eaters since they always reject that fruit. That aside, Susanoo looks at Minato and tells him that he eats a lot for being so skinny, and he also eats fast. Minato calmly swallows his food and clarifies that he could say the same thing about him. Susanoo admits that he won't grow any bigger even if he stuffs himself now, and Minato tells him that he's a grown-up at a respectable age. Despite that, Susanoo only tells him that he's as good as a baby, but he's not that different from him. Minato clarifies that that only applies to their appearances, but Susanoo gets grumpy again and asks him not to treat him like he's old, because he's still very young. He then admits that a kid like him is still better than nothing, because left alone, Grandpa Yamagami overuses his power and gets small all the time. Besides, it looks like trouble keeps happening around here, like evil spirits and abandoned kami realms. Minato doesn't entirely understand what his point is, so Susanoo tells him that he needs to support that old god with his power. Minato asks him if that's why he picked him and why he chose to train him in the first place. Susanoo obviously denies it, but Minato thanks him anyway, saying that he can go ahead and eat more. Susanoo then asks him when he wants to do this again, because he's clearly not done yet, and they could keep going tomorrow or the day after. His fun is interrupted when Amaterasu suddenly shows up, asking him why he's acting all violent toward a human, not to mention making him feed him. Susanoo nervously tries to explain the situation, but Amaterasu tells him that he needs to stop inconveniencing the poor guy, and if he's done with what he came here for, then they should just go home. Without waiting for an answer, she simply drags him away, so Susanoo tries to protest and tells her that he's still eating. Just then, the Martins arrive with a basket of fruit, saying that they've brought some produce from the mountain, all freshly harvested. Susanoo gets really excited for a moment, but Amaterasu brings him back to reality and reminds him that he's going home now. Meanwhile, Shiori leads Harima and Kotetsu to the empty lot, saying that this is where the evil spirits are spawning. The place is completely covered in a dense miasma, so Kotetsu says that they must purify it all at once. However, before they can do anything, several evil spirits suddenly appear, and that's when they see a huge abandoned kami realm in the sky. They soon realize that all the evil spirits are coming from it, and it's the reason evil spirits continue to increase. The abandoned kami realm begins to move in the sky, bringing dark clouds all around with it. These dark clouds even reach Minato's sacred garden, so Yamagami knows that something is going on. Somewhere else, the unknown man with a hat also sees the clouds, already knowing what it is.